So there's been a bit of a cock up in this episode. This microphone didn't work, and I had to use the microphone of the web camera, which resulted in rather choppy audio. Sorry about that. And yeah, just sort of muscle through that. God damn it! Now I've got to deal with drilling upstairs. Enjoy.
Paul, thanks so much for doing this. Really appreciate it. We've had a little bit of audio and video problems, but things have sort of panned out as best as we can. Yeah, great. I know you're a busy man, and I really appreciate you coming on and sharing this information with me. You seem like a really interesting fellow, and I can plumb the depths of your mind for more information. So.
Okay, great. Yeah, I mean, you're using the webcam microphone, and I'm holding a microphone, so.
Dude,
but between the two of us, we've got two microphones and two cameras. So
yeah, you want any more duct tape to go with this? I mean, like, this is barely just dragging our asses through the solution.
Yeah.
So I came across you. Well, somebody tweeted something along the lines of BIP300 does some sort of fantastic, amazing, beautiful things. And I had a look at that, and I thought, oh, this is actually quite interesting. I wonder if I can get the author of BIP 300 and 301 on to discuss these sorts of things. I did a bit of search on Twitter and whatnot, and I found that the quality of the arguments against it was rather dismal. And I thought and I thought it would be a great idea if we could sort of, like, get into the depths of what's going on with this, and you certainly, and above all, not that it is of any consequence, that it makes a difference from my perspective, but you have an implementation, and that implementation means that you know what the hell you're talking about.
It is shocking. A lot of people will say stuff like people will say things that reveal that they don't realize that any of the software exists, despite the fact that if you just go to the front page of the site, the BIP300.info or drivechain.info, there's screenshots of the software. Like, if you just scroll down a little, but many people will just come straight out of the gate, guns blazing, and they don't realize that software exists. So, and many people will admit, I've had many people admit to me over the years that they haven't looked into it at all, but here's their thought. They just want to throw out a thought. And they're like, well, you just said you haven't looked into it at all. So I don't know, I think we're slowly, people are changing their mind now. It's exactly what you said, where they see the critics and then they're like, what? They're like, that guy doesn't know that it's a soft fork and not a hard fork or something. Like, people will say really bizarre things like that. That happened just yesterday. Someone was like, oh, it needs a hard fork. And then everyone in the comments was like, no, it doesn't. So.
Well, at least you got that going for it. I mean, some of the audience seems knowledgeable, when I see these questions and whatnot, or the FUD that is stirred up around it. And I'm like, oh, okay. Yeah, some of the responses to that thing are actually on point. But yeah, it'd be interesting to sort of like go into, like, are you, first of all, are you the original person, the person who came up with this idea?
Yes, right. Yeah, November 2015, I published it on my blog a quadrillion years ago. I actually published it on Bitcoin Talk before then. Everything, back in the day, everything started on Bitcoin Talk. And so Bitcoin Talk contains every idea ever thought up by man. It's just you have to rediscover it and then post it somewhere else. But yeah, no, a long time ago. Yeah, and it's actually one of the things that I think is very interesting. If you really want to get into like the murky depths of like what's going on here, you can read the original post, and it's shocking exactly what I foresaw. Like, when I wrote the post, I wrote like, well, here's what people might think, and I like completely 100% nailed it. Like, it's shocking how many of the arguments I anticipated from the very onset. Like the whole miners can steal thing. There's like a whole section about that. This is like in the very first document introducing this idea ever. And there's been very little progress on that. I have a whole, I have like a bunch of armchair psychology and sociology that I do that I think is just related to people, like to try to explain why it is people don't love this idea, even though it's obviously great, or at least obviously a very small risk and an enormous potential reward. I don't know if that interests anyone, but I just think, and then the various attempts to like slowly redesign it out of existence, where people say, well, it might affect this. And in reality, it's 99.99% likely to improve that thing in every way, and 0.01% likely to have no effect. And then people are like, well, I'm not comfortable with it possibly affecting something. And you're like, well, we could make it affect nothing if it didn't exist. And that's like subconsciously what many people want. I don't know. Maybe many of the people listening like have no idea what we're even talking about.
That's the other thing, is that like I think people sort of like grasp onto something and they say, all right, I'm not going to do the intellectual work to go into something and try to understand.
John Carvalho and Tone Vase told me stuff like that in person. They're like, well, if Greg Maxwell says it's a good idea, I'll say it's a good idea. And if he says it's a bad idea, I'll say it's a bad idea. And I'm like, okay, well, why would you say that out loud? Because it makes you sound silly. But there you go.
Well, I can't speak for them, but I agree with you. But this is also one of the points of actually doing this podcast, is so that we can get into the weeds. And while people maybe like doing like a jog or exercise or something, they can listen to listen to this podcast and sort of get an understanding of what BIP 300 is all about. And maybe there might be software developers, because it doesn't matter going into like deep complicated detail. I'm happy with that. Now, were you the actual programmer behind this, or do you have a small team behind you helping you?
No, I mostly work with a small team of basically one other person, who is another person that has contributed to Bitcoin Core numerous times. I do write software, but it's terrible, and so it's not like the C++. Like there's like I would write like I have an academic background, so I don't really care for things that are like memory management and zooming way into like the details of like you like allocating memory and freeing it out. Like I'm not really interested in that. I just like want something to go in and something to come out. I don't want it to be like efficient. Like that's not where my interest is. So sometimes I'll do stuff like that, but mostly none of the C that is now published on drivechain.info was written by me. None of it. So actually,
okay. So so you formed a pivotal role in guiding the implementation. Is that correct?
Right. Yeah, I sort of designed it. I helped test it all the time. So I would say it's something like software architect or something.
Okay. All right. And what is your background? Is it to do with software or?
No, my background's in economics actually, and statistics.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Okay.
I have I have an undergrad in econ. I also have I did a double major. I have another undergrad in psychology also, and I minored in math and music. And then I have 2 master's degrees. One is in a version of applied math called operations research. And the other is an MBA in finance. Then I worked at the Yale University Department of Economics for a guy named Bill Nordhaus, who won the Nobel Prize in 2018 or 2019. So that was fun. And that was actually a lot of fun. And that's where I was working on what became Truthcoin. It was now Bitcoin Hivemind, which was a sidechain. And then while working on that, it was apparent that there would be no sidechains stuff around. So I also invented drivechain, which now is BIP 300 and 301.
Okay, so this was the future prediction market thing,
right.
Thingy-mabob that you had early on. How did you come about with that design?
Well,
or that idea?
That's a good question. So in 2012, there used to be a website called InTrade, and it was my favorite website on the internet. And it closed after the U.S. elections cycle in 2012. The U.S. government kind of shut it down, and I was kind of getting into Bitcoin at the time. And so I was like, you could build maybe a version that didn't need to be shut down. But that one that also crucially, and this is something that still people don't like understand today. This was like back in 2012 again. And I knew that it would be stupid to just say, we'll give the coins to someone who will decide the winner of the, like you're going to be betting on like whether or not Donald Trump is elected in the next cycle. Someone has to throw the yes or no. They have to give it a thumbs up or a thumbs down. That person can control all the money there. That's basically, they're like a bank or an exchange or something. The money goes to them. If objectively they lose, the shares will be trading at near zero. So they could buy all the shares at near zero, flip the lie and give the wrong answer, and extract all the money to themselves. So whoever is the oracle owns all of the money in the market. So I knew that it would be stupid to just give that control over that to some person. If it was really going to be like Bitcoin, it had to be controlled by some kind of process with replaceable people, exactly like mining works. And this simple insight is, most of the people for years have been doing Oracle work in Bitcoin and Ethereum that is just, from my point of view, frustratingly stupid. They have not, reached this. This is like square one for me. And then I've laid out like several other squares, including one or two that are fatal for Ethereum about like the Oracle needs to get a kind of, they need to extract what's called in economics a kind of rent based on the opportunity cost of this lie. As I just explained, they can lie and earn money as a result, and they so you need to do something to reward them to a degree that's greater than this opportunity cost, this critical threshold. But you can never do that if the oracles can steal each other's answers and freeload off each other's reputations. Not free ride off of their work, the work they do to look up whether or not. But if they could, whether or not Donald Trump won an election or not, that's fine. They can't free ride off of each other's reputations. This is something that I think still, even though I've presented about it and published on it many times, presented about it at QCon in London, I think pretty much still like only like, me and 4 or 5 other people who watched my talks like actually understand. And the Oracle problem cannot be solved until all these square, you have to get from square one to square to the finish line. And so, yeah. And so that's that was the origin of the motivation. I wanted to do that. And then I knew that it had to be sort of blockchain-like. It was just some other stuff in statistics that I had picked up along the way. There's something called factor analysis that I had learned about in school and was very interested in. And that was like related to how the oracles came to an agreement, even though you didn't know how many oracles there were, and you didn't know if all of them had an incentive to lie about everything. So that that was its own kind of thing. But that's itself a really cool project, and maybe a reason to support BIP 300. You could check that out at Bitcoin Hive Mind if you like. I really think that it has the potential to, I don't know, like save the world, because one of the many things it accomplishes is that it allows a bad leader to be replaced very easily.
Uh-huh.
So normally you have a problem where most people don't know they have like the Democrat and the Republican. This is best case scenario in a world where you have a democracy with first past the post and like private ballots and working elections and stuff. So even if you have that best case scenario, most people there's 2 parties. There's a lot of ignorant voters. It's very easy to mislead many voters. It's very unlikely that your vote will be pivotal, so you don't put a lot of effort into researching the vote. And so you don't know which of the 2 is worse. Try to maybe vote for the lesser of 2 evils, but perhaps you can't determine which of the 2 is the lesser of 2 evils. But with the prediction markets, you can measure it exactly. You could measure exactly their future performance on anything measurable, like GDP, unemployment rate, over the 4 years, total number of people who die, land value of all the land in the United States or whatever. and you just have those numbers on voting day, and then you just pick whoever has better numbers. And all of the difficult work of figuring out who is better than which of the two candidates is better would be done by like hedge fund type people who are like super professionals who are, it's almost impossible to mislead. And if they are misled, they lose money. So they're working every day to have the most accurate information. So that in itself would solve a lot of problems of like who we elect, but also in the political environment, but also who is chosen as CEO. So many of the problems in a big government are also present in a large corporation. The corporation is, of course, better because it can always, if it screws up too badly, eventually the CEO will either be fired or the entire company will go bankrupt. So there is at least some kind of feedback loop there, keeping things on the rails. But ultimately, many CEOs just rule with impunity, and they extract enormous salaries, and they mostly do things that make it harder for them to be fired, but not necessarily things that are great for what you might call things that are great for like the consumer or the employees or the shareholders. So that's kind of how I got really into that. That's also why I have to insist on a sidechain design that actually works. So I need one that works. I can't settle for one that does not work, like Liquid, for example, because Liquid is just the problem of finding which custodians will be the jailers of the coins. And so it's just, I mean, you have a big smile on your face when I say that. I would use Liquid. That's the thing is I would use, if something else worked, I would use it. So that's the thing is, that this is like a game of Among Us where I have the med-based scan or whatever. And that I'm on the good team because I have a real thing to accomplish. So I'm the only one who's been cleared.
I'm good with that. It's just, the thing is that just in this little bit of conversation, there's so much to unwrap, to unwrap there. And
I know you took it way outside of like BIP 300 into prediction markets territory.
No, that's fine. Yeah. That's totally cool. Yeah. I mean, we got the time to do this. It's also, it's also get to know you some more. Shit, I just broke my pen. Okay. Just get to know you more and get to know, what makes you beat, basically.
But that's what it is, though. I really think we're all like everyone's going to die, and all of our children are going to die, and grandchildren are going to die, so I mean, this is going to sound super weird, but I mean, so think about this though. Eventually, our species will cure mortality and aging, right? It's like over the next 2,000, 3,000 years or something, they will eventually do it, right? And who's going to choose to get old when they do that? Even if they do, those people will die off in a Darwinian sense. So eventually, there'll be a society where just everyone lives forever, as like a 25-year-old or whatever.
So this is why we need your technology, right?
So, but what I'm saying is, those people they'll meet and they'll in a bar and they'll be like, they'll be like, my great grandfather could have worked really hard to save his life and his children's lives, but instead why didn't they do anything about it? Just like when we talk about slavery or whatever weird divine right of kings or this other weird stuff that we think, well, why didn't they just do anything about that? And that's the way it is. Most people are just conformists, but I think this would shake things up in a big way.
Absolutely.
So you're like, what makes me tick? So I'm like, well, how do we, the big barrier to progress, a lot of it is our terrible government policies. Like someone once calculated like the ROI on free trade or something.
Ridiculous,
and it was like 38 million% or something ridiculous. Like if they could just get like the G7 to like declare, there's someone made like a thing of like the dumbest government policies. And it's like, we have a lot of terrible ones. I'm sure if you're into Bitcoin, you know about a lot of things. The government probably shouldn't mess with the price system at all. There probably shouldn't be any kind of setting of wages or any other prices. The tax situation is totally screwed up, and there's a million ways that it could be improved, like easily by just cutting many things completely, like the corporate tax and the payroll tax just shouldn't exist anywhere. You could just delete those from society, and that would enormously improve everything and cost nothing.
Yeah.
So that there's stuff like that. So like so how come we can't get that? And it's because the election process is not, is not working optimally.
Okay,
So we could just tune that
it's
out.
meant not to work properly. They want it not to work. Whoever they is.
Yeah, well, the tax situation is certainly like that, right? They want it to be complicated so they can give out little rewards and punishments to people. So they're the big group that benefit the politicians. So you obviously have the tax lawyers and the accountants. Those are the most obvious beneficiaries. But the much more insidious beneficiaries are the politicians themselves. They want the entire thing to be non-transparent and unmonitorable so that they can use it to purchase votes, basically. And basically, but not basically, like a corrupt, a de facto corrupt way. I think it's not so bad. I am a libertarian, but I think it's not so bad in the United States. Like it's sort of still on the rails, I think, actually here, whereas it's much worse in North Korea or something. I guess it's a bad standard of comparison, but I mean, how's it going in Hong Kong?
Oh, we just got a spot of communism. That's all. A spot of a communist problem going on around here.
As we all know, you just get a spot and then it just goes away and nothing bad happens.
Absolutely, just a blemish on the skin. We just had a 26-year-old newspaper agency I think it's called Apple Daily, closed, wiped out.
I saw a tweet about that. I literally thought that had something to do with Apple computers or something. Now I realized that was so. Yeah. So whenever someone goes against freedom of speech, it's because they have the most persuasive arguments.
Well, Jimmy Lai, the founder of this organization, I think he just ran away from China. He was a billionaire, and he set up this organization, and he's always been prodding the CCP via these newspapers, and I think he has also been collaborating with foreign governments. I don't know, but that was the reason why he was arrested, as well as the rest of his staff. Company shut down. You say bad things about the CCP around here. That's what will happen to you. That's what will happen to you.
Oh my God! Are we releasing this podcast in CCP controlled regions of the world?
I think we have freedom of speech around here. The chief executive said that, but I'm not really fussed with it. I see the benefits of the system. I see the benefits of the system. It's shades of gray, man. 50 shades of gray going around here.
You see the benefits of being a single party totalitarian state. Is that what you're saying?
Single party totalitarian state where you have competitive dictatorships.
Yes. Well, I agree with that. The key thing is you have to have the bad leader be able to be replaced. Right. But that's exactly what the CCP is. How do you replace? You know what I mean? It's like you have to replace the guy at the top, which you can't do, and that's why. And here's the other thing. Exactly right. And in the cartoon character that shall not be referenced. The thing is, it's easy to get like a dictatorship or whatever to work at first. They make something that is bad at error correction. It makes fewer errors. So it looks great, and then it makes the big error, and then it's a disaster. But like something like a democracy, it looks like chaos, and it makes many mistakes, but it's stable for hundreds of years of mistake. But so I agree. Like, there's nothing like sacred about democracy per se.
Yeah.
It is just a method by which a bad ruler can be replaced, where the badness of the ruler is at least accountable to like most people, which is like. That's something.
So now throw in the situation where we've reached hyper-Bitcoinization, whatever that means. What happens to these politicians?
It means that first of all, it means that there's no more fiat currency, and everyone uses Bitcoin to buy everything.
Well, Bitcoin is a fiat currency, isn't it?
Well, now the word fiat is used in contrast to.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so monopoly money.
This is the thing about words is they mean whatever the audience thinks.
Yeah, true.
So that's how it is. If you go to a Spanish-speaking country, you have to speak Spanish.
Yeah.
Dutch, like in Dutch, recht means right, but in English, recht means that you crashed your ship into a bridge.
True. No, Eric Voskuil, he took me to school. with regard to Bitcoin being a fiat currency, and I think he's right. Yeah, it's just there's no monopoly control over the printing of it.
Yes, you see the no, but Eric Voskuil is one of these crazy, like Rothbardian,
I like that guy.
primitivist, like a kind of what you would call like this kind of like everything is derived from axioms, praxeology, like type thing. Like you build the base, and then you put a brick, and then eventually the tower is completed. But I don't believe in that at all. I think that's silly. But
so you're more
nonetheless. I am I'm like, I believe in fallibilism. So I think that the knowledge is like a map in your mind. And it's like having if you want to walk through your apartment in the dark, if you've been there before, you can either open your eyes or with your eyes closed, you can either open your eyes and look at the apartment in the real world, or you can close your eyes and look at the apartment in your mind. And then either way you can walk around the apartment. And that's what I think knowledge is. And so you can start out with a sketch that it doesn't come from the bottom or the top. It's just in the middle. And you can just conjecture into existence like on a whim. And so if someone asks you, what do you think of whatever fake worldistan, it doesn't matter that
elephants fall from the sky. That's your response.
It doesn't matter that fake worldistan doesn't exist. You can say, well, my brain knows the stuff. He's pretending that there's a place, so it probably has gravity, it probably has people, it probably has trees. So you can actually you don't have to build it up from anywhere. You can just say, okay, I kind of get what he's talking about based on stuff that I already know, copy and paste, change some details. So I don't think you have to like build everything up from these. Also, definitions can't be wrong. They're just labels on things, so they only have to be consistent. And when you translate from one person to you can talk to yourself at a later time. Like I could leave a note for myself. Remember to whatever, pack your toothbrush if I'm traveling or something like that. I'm sending a note to my future self, or if I send a note to someone else, I just need to make sure that there's some kind of mapping from the one person's labels to the other person's.
But stubbing your toe further informs that knowledge. And in the case of like of oracles, you said you just sort of like incantation made this thing come into existence. In your case of the oracles, you did build up from something.
Yes, that's true. It doesn't work. The oracle problem is not. I don't think it's very epistemological. It's ironic to say that, though. So if epistemology is like the science of how do we know that something is true, but the oracle problem in the blockchain is not really. I don't think it's that type of problem. Like in Truthcoin, what I designed, it's just designed to say, like, okay, first of all, you bet on things first. You write the question first. You write the label. And then people bet. The market is created, and the markets are created, and people bet in them. But you don't trigger the thing to figure out what actually happened until much later, after the event happens. So the scope is like there's a bunch of things that humans already know. Like humans know whether or not Donald Trump won the election in 2020 and 2016. People just know that. And other things that you might want to look up, like what was the Dow Jones Industrial Average on a certain day. It's not like those things are like epistemically unknowable or something. Everyone knows them already. That's just the whole thing in the Oracle problem is a game to dissuade people from lying about what they know. So it's all about an honest report. It's not actually about like the great philosophical question of how do we know that Hillary Clinton didn't actually win and she's been running the country in secret the whole time. It's not like about that. That's like, so that would be like an epistemological type things, but it's not like that.
Yeah, I've sort of like relegated oracles to be like, I don't see a solution to them, and I think smart contracts are. I used to like them, but no longer, because I mean, if smart contracts seem to want to absorb the whole universe, the information universe, onto the blockchain. Like, good luck in doing that. You're just not going to do that. And any sort of input to a smart contract in the form of an oracle just becomes a great big gaping security hole for the very reason that you just mentioned.
Well, you know that I have a lot of design in there to try and. So as I just said, the part of it is that the scope is deliberately narrowed. So it's not trying to. There's like an early fail-safe in the thing where people can agree that the question is too difficult to answer. That's like one of the possible ways of answering the question, which has negative consequences for the person who wrote the question, among other things. But also, it has little to no effect on the rest of the system. So the rest of the system still works, even if that is a selected answer. So it's sort of sanitized away, and yet people are incentivized to write clear questions. So there's a clear scope. I say, like, if it takes more than 60 seconds on Google or whatever to answer this question, then it's too difficult. So I deliberately narrow it away. There's another thing, which is that you don't, for many things like the Dow Jones Industrial Average example that I mentioned, you don't actually need to check in every day. You can check in like once every few months because of just the efficient markets hypothesis and just basic present value type stuff. So you can just say, we're going to bet on the Dow Jones Industrial Average like 3 months from now. But if you just continuously bet on that thing, it should track today's price of the Dow Jones Industrial Average, because if it deviates too much, people can buy low and sell high and extract the arbitrage yield. So as long as it really will end up being worth a share of Dow Jones Industrial Average in the future, you only need to ask the Oracle like once or twice per year. And then you have something that will accurately record the price the entire 24/7, 365. So these are more things that people never thought about and still don't know about oracles, unfortunately, because people still think, oh, we want it to resolve quickly, we want it to check in rapidly, but that's not necessary. The only thing that's necessary is for it to be very robust and accurate when it ultimately does check in.
So in some senses, actually, drivechain is an extension of this Oracle work. Because
because it's the ultimate. It's saying you only need 32 bytes, and we're just going to conjecture it into existence. So it is. All the threads are related. We say, instead of voting on all these different things, like 250 things per quarter, it's just one single 32-byte hash that's going to be in the GUI of the sidechain software. And instead of the method by which people come to agreement is very different in drivechain than it is in Truthcoin, but it is designed because it's designed for a different purpose and to like resist other mistakes. But yeah, it's just kind of asserted, and then there's this long period when it could be easily refuted. But if it's not refuted, then it's taken as the outcome in the blockchain world.
Yeah. Okay. So like, yeah, you're mentioning that the oracles, they could give out in Truthcoin. The oracles could give out some information, maybe once or twice a year, and then before it becomes accepted as fact, maybe there would be a period of time whereby people can bring up an issue with
in
it.
Truthcoin, there's like it's the way it's currently set up is done quarterly. It's not so like, but it's very slow. So like, if you wanted to bet on the election, so let's say we wanted to bet on the U.S. presidential election, hypothetically, in the next cycle, which will be 2024, right? The slots are available like 5 years out, partially for this use case. And so you'd say, yeah, you want a slot, and in that for something that's happening in Q4. The event is happening in Q4 of 2024 because the elections are in November in America, which is in the fourth quarter. So you buy a slot for something happening then, and you write in the slot, all this information, like, will Donald Trump win in 2024? I don't know. I just think it's fine. I don't particularly. It sounds like I'm like pushing for Trump to like run and win in 2024. I'm not. I just think he's such an iconic guy, and it would be a funny thing that people could disagree on today. So they would you'd create this slot in 2024 that he would be running, and you ask the question then, or that he would win, not that he's running. You say, will Donald Trump win? That's Q4. then what happens is Truthcoin will wait until the end of Q4 to even start the process of resolving it, which itself takes the whole quarter. So it won't be until the beginning of Q2 of 2025, April 1st, that it pays everyone out. A lot of people think that matters, but it doesn't matter at all, because if he actually wins and if the process works, the key thing is the process has to work. That's the only thing that makes any difference. The time thing is not important at all.
Okay.
If people know that it will work, the shares will be worth like whatever it is, 1 Bitcoin per share, instead of being worth 0 Bitcoins per share or like half a Bitcoin per share or whatever, in the market, because the market has these that's what's happening when the Oracle resolves it. It's saying whose shares are worth what. And so if they're going to be worth 1 eventually, then a bunch of people can just meet in November, and once it's clear that he's going to win, they will bid up the price up to like 90.99 or something, or 0.98 or whatever it is, because they'll say, I'll buy something and I'll get a little yield in return for waiting for time value of money. But you say, well, this was well designed and I know that it works, so I know that it will be each share will be worth 1 Bitcoin in the future, a few months from now. So of course, why would you not pay? Why wouldn't you pay 0.75 or 0.80 or 0.90 or 0.95? And so it doesn't matter. So the people who want their money quickly can just sell. They bought a share when it was uncertain. Maybe they bought a share for 0.35, 35% or something. Now it's up to 99, 98%. They just sell, and it's that they just, in their mind, they just count that last 2% as like some kind of fee or something.
I see.
So the speed doesn't matter. There's more things that people don't understand about oracles. I don't know why. I explained it all in detail in this paper I wrote in like January 2014. But no one has read it, so it's too long, I guess.
Well, I think now's also an opportunity to be able to discuss it and converse about it, which is another thing.
Talk about it more. We can talk about whatever you like.
Great. So the main difference is between truth. Okay, but where is the time, the waiting in drivecoin actually has a very important role. Is that not right?
The waiting? What do you mean in drivechain? What are you talking about?
So drivechain, like settling back to layer 1.
Yes.
You know what? Before we get into the nitty gritty, maybe we should actually just start to give a bit of an overview of what drivechain is, or BIP 300 is, so that because if I start saying there's a waiting period going from down to layer 1, people are like, what the fuck is this guy talking about?
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know if anyone will. Well, there's a poor track record of people understanding it. We do have software, though. You can just open the software. This is my plea to the world. Just go, and obviously you have security problems, so don't just run software just because someone tells you to. Like open get VirtualBox or something. You can get free stuff that will protect you from evil software. But just download the software and just run the software, and then you'll know what it does much better than anyone on Twitter. So if you want to know more than anyone else, I think though, more armchair psychology. A lot of people don't want to be right, and they don't want to know more than anyone else. They want to know basically what everyone else knows, so that they are a good member of the group. But if you do want to know better than everyone else, just download the software and run it, and you'll see for yourself what all these things are. There's a great Cryptex did a great job with the GUI. It explains everything. There's lots of buttons that you can click with question marks. I think we're going to change those into mouse overs, but there's buttons you can click that Windows will pop up and try to explain things to you. I think all the explanations, all the text was written by me. So, I mean,
was it dripping with sarcasm?
Yeah, I try to make it good, but that's for the reader to decide. Unfortunately for me, so you'll see if you think it makes any sense at all.
But I'm not having it. That was just a plug to run the software. I'm not having it. I want to know. I want to hear verbal answers to this. Like for example, what is drivechain?
Okay, drivechain was the idea that I published in November 2015.
Yeah.
this Blockstream introduced this sidechains concept like in 2014.
Called Liquid.
No. It was not called Liquid until much later.
Okay.
In fact, Liquid was like, it's kind of this stopgap thing that they thought we're just gonna put this up for like 2 weeks and then take it down.
Boom.
So they never right exactly. So
more
they introduced this idea.
Out.
So there's a good so the idea behind sidechains was a response to altcoins. It said, well, most of these altcoins are complete trash, but there's one or two that are merely fringe, they're not like total garbage, but they're too weird to be part of Bitcoin. So what the idea was is that you could create an altcoin that didn't have basically a shit coin in it, and it had no coins. So it starts with 0 coins. Then you send Bitcoin into the chain, and then you use it there. And then there you can do whatever you like. You can have Monero ring signatures, Ethereum.
Let's give a real use case.
Yeah.
For example, fungibility of Bitcoin. This is one major thing that gold has over Bitcoin. And this is my primary reason for being interested in BIP 300.
Because we have the Zcash altcoin, or the Zcash sidechain already. Yeah, so Zcash is a perfect example. The ZK snarks are weird. We have a Zcash testnet sidechain. And you send coins over, and I made this cool YouTube video. I don't know how cool it is, but it's a YouTube
cool.
video. And you send the coins over. You start with Bitcoin. You get an address from the sidechain. You send coins over to there, and they leave the Bitcoin world, and they show up over there. And that world has, the Zcash technology. So it has addresses that start with the Z. It has private Z to Z transactions that obscure the sender or the receiver and the amount. It has all kinds of other stuff. It has a cool thing we wrote called Meltcast that kind of standardizes the coin amounts to preserve privacy. So, and then you can take the coins back once they have new owners. The new owners can take them back to layer 1. So it's kind of like the Lightning Network, where you put coins into something else. Stuff happens over there, and then the net effect of all those transactions will end up on layer 1 without layer 1 knowing necessarily what happened.
So one of the arguments against drivechain is that the validators are off chain.
Well, let me just explain quickly that so drivechain was the idea. Then later on it became there was a critique about mining that was stupid, but I realized that you could even though it was stupid, you could easily solve it anyway with something called blind merge mining. So then when I wrote the BIPs, I separated them out because they're already hard to read as it is, and they were a little long. So I separated. So blind merge mining became BIP 301, and just the part about sending the coins in and out, that became BIP 300. And those BIP 300 are like the side chains. Whether or not those side chains use blind merge mining or not is optional, and there's no real way to even enforce it. Since you could do anything over there, you don't have to use. So it is kind of they did become modular, but I think that anyone with a brain who used BIP 300 would also use BIP 301. So that's just to explain what's going on, maybe. And then, so what did you just ask about that? What did you just say?
Yeah, no, I'm busy taking notes about what I need to ask you later on. I don't know what I was talking about.
Oh, okay, great.
Oh, yes, no, I was referring to the slowdown. There was an early on before I asked you to explain the drive chain. I want to get to the point where, we're using the example of a real world case of
Zcash, right?
Yeah, the Zcash to solve the fungibility problem. So look, we can see quite clearly that there is a use case for this. As in, you can lose the track record of a coin, but then, the validator's off chain.
Oh, yeah. Okay. So, yes, you don't want it to be the case that the validator is on layer 1. So, unfortunately, it's off of chain. It's like both of the things are separate blockchains. So, the terminology of whether or not something's on or off chain becomes less helpful.
Yeah.
But you don't want layer 1 to do the validation work, because then it's just basically a mandatory block size increase. And that's sort of cheating. You can just say, well, we'll just force everyone to do it. The whole trick is to try to not force anyone to do anything, but still get all the new features and benefits. That's the trick. And that's why what the so-called SPV proof is the compromise.
Define SPV, and then later on,
Yes,
define blind merge
SPV.
mining.
Sure. SPV is an idea, simplified payment verification, that is from Satoshi's white paper originally. So that is when you do not run a full node and you do not check that the blockchain is correct, but you just check to see, am I on basically the network that everyone else in the world is on? Does it have the hash rate? And if it does, you just sort of shrug and say, well, I probably got paid, because you can see that your transaction is in the blockchain. And so but you cannot, you don't know that the blockchain is in fact the Bitcoin blockchain, but you can check that the proof of work was done very easily. So the thing about the blockchain that was really, really, really difficult to check and took a lot of effort, which is of course the proof of work, that's something you can check very easily. And you can check that your transaction was included in a block. But you don't check anything else. So the distinguishing feature of the SPV mode is that you have no recourse if the miners collude and lie, because you don't know that they are lying unless you run the full node. So
Okay,
that's the distinguishing feature.
I see. All right.
And there's a lot of controversy over this, in the block size war, where many of the large blockers felt that miners would probably not lie, or that was an overblown fear, and so they were more willing to tolerate SPV mode, and other people were not of that opinion. So the idea of the SPV proof is the idea that the coins it's kind of, the SPV proof is almost like reversing all that logic, actually, because the SPV proof says, here's something on layer 1 where full nodes will accept it if it has a lot of hash rate on it, and it will reject it if it does not have the hash rate on it. So it's a kind of a reversal all of a sudden of that thing I explained earlier, of which is to say, the full nodes now are checking the rules, and one of the many rules that are checked, like the rules about you can't spend money you don't have, the signatures have to work, blah, blah, blah. One of the rules is now a rule that only checks if there's been hash rate on something. And that is what BIP300 is, a version of that, which allows you to send some coins into the sidechain. They basically go into a box. The box is opened by 3 months of hash rate. And this hence opens the door to the so-called miners can steal critique, because the miners can open the box however they like.
Okay.
And with full nodes will then accept the transactions. So this all leads back to your question. Full nodes will accept however the box is opened, they'll say that is the real way. And that is why the validation is not on layer 2. Which is exactly what we wanted the whole time. So I don't know if maybe this was too difficult for people to follow, but I'll recap it. We don't want the validation to be on layer 1. That is cheating. That creates that means you're just passing the buck, and you're saying, well, I want this feature, and I'm going to make everyone in the world, I'm going to force everyone in the world to support it. So we don't want it to be on validation to be on layer 1. We want it to be on layer 2. How do we get it on layer 2? Well, we could just do nothing, but then it would be insecure. So how do we get the best of both worlds? We want to check something on layer 1, but we don't want to check all the rules on layer 2 because that would be the passing the buck. So we're only going to check the proof of work, which is the easiest thing to check and the hardest thing to fake. And we're going to hope that that is good enough.
This is a hash.
And then we're going to do a lot of other stuff also.
Yeah, this box you're referring to is a hash time lock.
No, it's not.
What is it?
That phrase refers to something that is opened when you know how to make a certain hash, basically. So the hashes are H. There's a code like a random R. When you hash it, you get H. So if you know the password, you can unlock the hash and use it. Basically, that's the something is promoted. Exactly, the preimage is the R, and there is something that you promote or demote, and when it reaches a certain threshold, a transaction matching that is allowed into layer 1.
And in this case, it's the hash rate.
No. The hash rate governs the promotion or demotion.
Right.
But the thing that you're promoting, that thing just happens to be a hash. That is the transaction ID of the withdrawal transaction from the box.
How does it work out what that hash is?
The sidechain computes the entire transaction for you that will take the money out of the box for everyone's for the 3-month period. And then it hashes it and it gives you the hash. Then the hash is just conjectured on layer 1, and then people vote it up and down. And you can always introduce a new one if you didn't like it. But you have to get it.
You thought all that up. You thought all that up.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's not that. Well, yeah. I mean, I don't. Well, it still remains to be seen if it's a good idea, and you. But yes, all the complexity is pushed into the sidechain, of course.
Yeah.
Because there, the real estate is cheaper, so to speak. They're the ones who want to do something so badly. So, and also there we have unlimited design freedom, right? On layer 1, we have to play nice, but there we have a blank slate and we can write whatever we want. So it's a no-brainer to push everything that you can over there. So that keeps track of all the withdrawals and deposits and all the sidechain activity. It keeps track of everything. It has its own blockchain with its own block headers, block hashes, whatever. And then it condenses all of the activity over 3 months into just that one withdrawal transaction hash. And then that's the thing that needs to be correct on layer 1. So you see, it's very asymmetric. Ever since COVID, I've been accidentally saying asymptomatic whenever I want to say the word asymmetric, and it's very funny.
Okay.
But so the asymmetry is that one person does. It's like going to court. When you go to court, you have to bring all your documents, and they have to be in order. And you have the judge's attention for 10 seconds, and they're like, "Give me this, show me pictures of the damages, blah blah blah," And then it's bang. You got to have all your stuff ready. So the work you do to prepare is a lot, and then they are allowed to, the process can audit you at any stage, and so you're vulnerable. You have to do all the work. So the point is you wouldn't do all this work if you didn't know that you had the case, and thus it deters spam, preserving the ability of the judge to try to compute, or the judge and jury or the process or whatever, the arbitrator, to try to compute who is in the right and who is in the wrong. So you have to prepare. So the sidechain does all the prep work, and it says it's committing to this hash for 3 months. And then on the main chain, it's bubbling up, and you can always try again with a new hash, but per sidechain slot, like everything for the Zcash sidechain, if you want to advance one, the others get demoted. So you can only ever have one. By the time if 3 months is 13,000.
Sorry, you can only advance one what?
When I'm talking about promoting it in the score, they have a little ACK score, and it has to reach 13,150.
Why that number?
Well, that's 3 months. That's how many blocks. So it moves one per block. You can stay the same, move up one, or move down one. So they're upvotes.
Okay. So then if things don't match out, then it gets demoted.
The miners can just they can introduce any hash they like, and they can promote one or demote. They can choose one to promote, basically, or they can demote all of them if they think that's like what I call the alarm when
So
they
when you
can't
say
figure out what's
miners,
going on.
when you say miners, you're referring to the
BTC.
sidechain miners.
No,
oh,
BTC
BTC miners.
miners. Yeah.
Okay, maybe we should get some
This is
terminology
another
right here.
insight that because Blockstream had a skip list idea and they were obsessed with the sidechains miners, but I realized that I think was just objectively a mistake, and you could improve it by recasting the whole thing. See, 51%. One thing that I think people should try to come to terms with is that 51% hash rate on Bitcoin, if it were a priori evil, can do whatever they like. They can rewrite the entire blockchain from scratch. They can steal from you. They can hold transactions hostage and extract all of the money from them. So if I send you like 5 coins, they can reorg that transaction out and then go between us and say, whichever one of you pays us 4.99, we'll either let you keep your money back or we'll force the transaction to go through. So they can steal all the money. They can steal from the Lightning Network by blocking all the justice transactions. And they can also censor any message they like from the blockchain with impunity, basically. If you have evil 51% mining coalition, it could block all the transfers into the Liquid network or whatever, or into some kind of other ZK snark scheme. So they can do whatever they like. That's not how I would frame the issue, but it's like the main chain 51%. It's impossible to kind of like get away from that vulnerability. So instead, I just say we just sacrifice everything and just bet it all on that, because
everything is bet on that. Anyway.
Everything is already bet on that. Exactly. Right. That's what I mean. That's why it actually doesn't really cost anything to do that. And there's a lot of benefits. One benefit is you don't have to prove what's happening on some other blockchain's proof of work, which may be horrendously complicated to figure out. But with this, it's just the main chain miners upvoting or downvoting something.
I see. So this is where you're deferring. Wow, interesting. So you're deferring pretty much all of the side chains, doesn't matter what it is, to the same mechanism that's securing Bitcoin.
Right. The side chains can have their own consensus. They could have.
But it would be a different sort of thing. It would be a different sort of.
It would only order blocks over there for them, and it would, whatever that thing is, it needs to compute one hash every 3 months.
Yes.
And send it back. So that thing could be like client server central bank digital currency or something, like it could be. And then the hash would just be whatever, for whatever it's going to be. Like the Chinese central bank digital currency, it could be whatever. There could be a private key, or excuse me, a public key known, a key pair that belongs to he who must not be named, or whoever. And that person will they just say they're going to sign a thing every 3 months. And, on January 1st, April 1st, and whatever, September 1st. And they just sign the thing and they say, this is the withdrawal. And now you have, but BIP 300 would still work with that. It would start to get silly, of course, but you could do anything. So, but I designed what I think is the optimal thing for the sidechains to use. And that's BIP 301. BIP 301 is just a thing. The sidechain gets all of Bitcoin's hash rate for free. The miners don't even have to run the sidechain nodes. They get paid on layer 1, all the transaction fees. Everything works automatically. So this is why I think if you're in for BIP 300, you should also be in for BIP 301. If you are a sidechain designer, you almost certainly care about some feature, like you care about ZK snarks or ring signatures, or you care about prediction markets or large blocks or something, Turing complete scripts. You almost certainly care about some kind of transaction or some kind of weird other thing, like David Vork's Sia coin, or that you care about something like that. And with new block validation rules so you probably don't care about the whole proof of work thing. You're probably on board with the fact that Bitcoin has solved that. So this just kind of lets you just kind of ignore that, run our sidechain template. It has all that stuff worked out for you, and then you can just put the stuff that you like into there's like a section of our template where you can put whatever the weird stuff is that you want to do, the like the ring signatures or the ZK snarks or whatever. So that's what I think anyone would do. There's no way, if you want those people who are obsessed with something else like proof of stake or something, I think that's for separate reasons. I think that's totally misguided and a terrible idea, which is why I haven't been interested in copying it. But
I agree.
I think that would be a little bit outside the scope of what BIP 300 could copy, because it's linked to Bitcoin's proof of work. But I think anyone who's listening and still thinks that proof of stake is a good idea, and as the years and years go by, and it still fails to appear, and it fails to confer any benefit to anyone. I mean, I don't know. It's
you mean extract benefit from everyone?
Yeah. So I don't know. I think that proof of stake is one of those things where people are just being scammed and they kind of don't realize it yet. But it is changes to the proof of work, the block ordering scheme, are the one thing that you cannot copy with BIP 300, BIP 301, because it's designed to be reliant on Bitcoin's hash rate. So it would have to be a very weirder design if you wanted to do that. But there's no value in that. BIP 301, you already reuse all Bitcoin's hash rate for free. So you don't need a new you don't need to do anything. You don't need proof of stake. You don't need to do anything.
This is sounding
assuming that works. Yeah.
So, okay, I don't think you actually gave a rather concise definition of what blind merge mining is.
Well, part of the problem is people don't know what merged mining is. So I've learned over the years that there's only 50 people who know what that is. So then saying that I have a blind variant is doesn't help anyone. So merged mining is a complicated idea to explain. It is.
What problem is it solving?
Satoshi invented it. Okay, so there was this new thing called BitDNS in the era of Satoshi in 2010.
Namecoin, right?
Yes, it later became Namecoin. Exactly.
Yeah. I used to knock around with Namecoin back in the day.
Yeah, it's awesome. Namecoin is still an awesome idea. I dream with sidechains. I think we could revive Namecoin and make it super cool.
No,
we could do all these cool things.
It's not anymore. That was one of the influential designs to the tech I'm working on at the moment. And the idea is to not just fuck it. No, just make names free. Free the names, man. Anyway,
the names. Yeah, but we need property rights. You understand? It's about Google.com they own the property of the name Google.
Well, just use your public key for that. Public key. So.
But they need to be you need to have. What about when I want to tell my friend it has to be pronounceable? They have to be something they can write down.
Fuck it, QR code, man.
Human readable.
QR code.
Yeah, but how do I know that it's hard for humans to audit something like that? Because maybe my QR code is on a screen and someone hacks the screen and it flickers and changes to different QR codes sometimes when I'm not looking. People I
will see that from the Diffie-Hellman checks.
Okay,
that's all good.
Well, we agree that there should be something for key pair ownership on the blockchain somewhere.
Yes, so, and anyway, that's a separate conversation.
Okay, so this is about merge DNS.
Problem is
yes, exactly.
DNS, yeah.
And what was realized was, instead of having a coin that had its own hashing, so you had miners, you have SHA-256 miners that hash. What you could do was the hash Bitcoin. And I don't know how this came about. I guess the average Bitcoiner was just a lot smarter back then. I think that is the case. Because the early people was just skimming the cream. Because people just came up with all this in a forum post one day. And it is kind of something else. So they were what you can do is there's Bitcoin. It's funny. It's related to sidechains intimately, because in the thread people quickly realized from the get-go, there could be lots of different blockchains that people might want to use, not just Bitcoin and Namecoin. We could have a whole thing, and we could generalize Bitcoin so that it could be used on all the chains. And in fact, Satoshi even throws out a line that says something about people won't want to spend money in Bitcoin's chain because the fees would be too expensive, and they'll transact on a cheaper blockchain. This is like 2010, just tossing out the idea of different blockchains with different fee rates, which is like bizarre. It's so interesting to read now, 11 years later. An enormous amount of time has passed. But the idea was,
well,
what
as
you
the
can do is,
architect of the system, you see so many different things. I don't think it's that strange that he would come up with that.
yeah.
Are you mean in contrast to the current community as it is?
Yeah,
today,
which
right?
even like the suggestion of different blockchains would be like
Heresy.
something that met with heresy and outrage. Yeah.
Oh,
So
I see.
the merge mining idea was you would run a node of Namecoin, to make it super short, and that when you found a Namecoin block, like part of the block would also be a valid Bitcoin block also. And so I mean, I'm scratching my face because I was like nervous about how short that explanation was. But what it is so like imagine you're finding Bitcoin block 100,001, 100,002, 100,003, 100,004. You turn on you turn on merge mining. You find block 100,005, and you also simultaneously find the first Namecoin block. And you find 100,006, and you find the second Namecoin block. And it was actually the Namecoin variant was designed so that you could do it either way. You could either find a Namecoin block all by itself, or you could find one by merge mining with BTC. Something extremely funny happened in 2017 when Bitcoin Cash came out. The difficulty takes 2 weeks to adjust, as we hopefully know. With the prices going up and down, and both of them using SHA-256D, then the difficulty was doing something weird where it would be too high on one of the two chains, and all the miners would switch over, because the relevant thing is the market price of the coin minus the price implied by the difficulty, basically, which is fixed for 2 weeks. So that determines profit. Obviously, because the miners get paid the coin, so this revenue is clear. If the coin is trading for 100,000 per coin, then the miner revenues are going to be high. If you get 7 coins in a block, and it's 100 coins, $100,000 per block, it's $700,000 every 10 minutes. So obviously the revenues are high. But the key thing is the difficulty is the cost. So profit is one minus the other. And the difficulty was being weird with the two, when Bitcoin Cash came out in 2017, thus leading the miners to just switch a lot between the two and mine all rush into one, because it would be frozen for 2 weeks, and they would mine it a lot. And when they mined a lot of blocks at the end of the 2016 block period, what happens? They mine a lot of blocks in a short period of time. The difficulty goes up. So so then they switch over to the other one, and then there was this kind of weird gyrating thing happening for a short time. During that time, though, because of the way Namecoin was designed, they could be merge mining Namecoin blocks both when it was because Namecoin doesn't know. Namecoin only knows SPV. All the concepts are related. Namecoin only knows if it's a Bitcoin block header or not. It's saying you're allowed to put in the Namecoin block header, which is what you mine. You're allowed to put something that looks like a Bitcoin block header in there. And so what people did for years is they put something that was a valid Bitcoin header that met the Bitcoin proof of work in there, and thus they mined both of the two at once. But when it came to 2017, they merged my Namecoin, and then it switched over which header was in there. So basically what happened was, the reason this is so funny is that Namecoin had a higher hash rate than either BTC or Bitcoin Cash for like a 3 or 4 week period or something. And because it could absorb the hash rate from both chains, basically. So it's a very bizarre situation.
So for a period of time,
Namecoin had the highest hash rate.
Superior proof of work coin ever in the history of humanity. Is that right?
And it had the highest hash rate, and it was very funny because at the time many large blockers were advancing the position that hash rate, should be the essentialist Bitcoin criterion or something, which is like how do we know which Bitcoin is the real Bitcoin? Well, whichever one has the most hash rate.
Well, guys,
But
you both got it
unfortunately,
wrong,
this
eh?
exactly right, exactly. So unfortunately, that argument torpedoed itself. For anyone who was paying attention, which was only like a few, if Jeremy Rand didn't tell me about it, I wouldn't have even noticed. And I tweeted about it, so
Who?
some people
Jeremy?
heard
Who?
about it. The guy behind Namecoin now.
Oh, yeah.
What is he, BioLizard89 on Twitter or something?
Yeah. Okay, so that's merge mining, and now and what are the detriments to
Yes,
to
it has
merge
two.
mining?
It has numerous problematic features. So one is you have to run the. You're on the. It's sort of a ratchet that only turns one way, where you have to run the more complicated node software each time because you're running a node that like is going to say, okay, we will mine something that also mines the predecessors. Whereas, BTC isn't like retrofitted to accommodate Namecoin. But with blind merge mining, this problem is solved because you do not need to run a Namecoin node in order to earn the transaction fees there. Instead, what you do is you auction off you have a Coinbase transaction in BTC. The miners control that absolutely. That's how they pay themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So you auction off like a part of like the real estate there. Basically, you have like a little code, and you say, "I'll auction this code off to whoever pays me the most on layer 1."
Wait, when you say Coinbase, you're referring to the American company, right?
No, I'm not at all. The American company is named after something that was named by Satoshi.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, okay, but I'm clarifying this because our audience are probably like, "Oh, Coinbase."
Yeah. The Coinbase took their name from something in Bitcoin, as did basically everyone else. Chain Code also did. Did you know that that's a thing in HD wallets? Blockchain.info, obviously. So a lot of the companies are named after something that is like in the Bitcoin code somewhere. And the Coinbase transaction refers to the very first transaction in each Bitcoin block. So that's what I'm talking about here.
Okay, now continue with the explanation.
The first transaction has the unique property that you'd know that its contents are chosen by the person who found the block. Whereas the other transactions, you just know that someone sent someone else Bitcoin. So it's a common trick in the Bitcoin development world if you want to interact with miners at all or learn something about them, you would ask them to put something there. Thus, you can hear from them. And you know that you're really hearing from people who are finding blocks and not just from someone who says that they're finding blocks.
Yeah, so you say, okay, I'll pay you. I'll pay this community, this group of miners. Like,
yes.
if you find a block and you put my information in there, I'll pay you some dosh.
Yeah, the idea is they're the rightful owners, because you could merge mine or you could do something else where they would be the ones who get paid. So they're the rightful owner. They can also censor any transactions in and out of the sidechain, so they could also shut the sidechain down. And so we have to be nice to them. Mm-hmm. That's another reason. The other thing is we want them and we want them to have skin in the game. If the sidechains do really well, we want them to be earning the transaction fees so that they are happy. We want them to be happy. So they're the rightful owner, basically, of this money, the sidechain's transaction fees. They're the rightful owner.
Right.
So the question is, how do we get them the money without forcing them to run the node? And so I just say, well, here's this code. You put a code in the Coinbase transaction somewhere, and you auction off the contents of that. The miners do. They say, I'll pay whoever pays me the most for sidechain number 3, the Zcash sidechain. Pay me 1.2 Bitcoin, 1.3 Bitcoin, 1.4 Bitcoin. You take the highest one. The offers are only valid for that block, and then they expire. You can only take one per sidechain. So people bid, and whoever bids the most gets to they pay 1.3 as long as the code is a certain way. The code is a certain way that says that. So let's say I'm the person who is running a sidechain node, and I mine a sidechain. I have a sidechain block that's worth 4 Bitcoin in fees over there. But how do I get it mined? How do I get it into everything? So I go to I call up whatever Jihan Wu.
Sorry, press pause. Hang about. This is gonna make the. I don't see why miners are not throwing everything at the wall to make this happen. because it sounds like that they can become quite profitable. It sounds like they can make pretty decent cash from this.
Oh, well, people have over the time. I mean, part of it is we have not finished it, the software. Do you understand what I'm saying? Are we still part of the podcast?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Because you said pause or something. I was like, is this happening? Did the time stop? No, they have over the years. There was a time in 2017 when taking money from miners would have been like too sketchy to even do. So I didn't take any money from even though it was offered. And then it's like kind of just like I don't know. I just kind of would like rather finish it first. So we were finishing it very slowly. But yeah, I think one reason why they might not though is that if you're a miner, your absolute revenues don't matter. They only matter for 2 weeks. Do you understand what I'm saying? So let's say there's something that will make miners earn $100 billion every block. Well, that'll be a great 2 weeks, but then the difficulty will go up and delete all of that. So the miners are in a rivalrous state with each other. What they really want, actually, if you're a miner, what you want is for the Bitcoin price to go up geometrically over time at like a rate that is slower than immediately per 2 weeks. Because if it goes up immediately, then the fun is over. But as long as it keeps changing, and you can always extract more profit. But you understand if it shot up immediately to $20 million per coin, they would have a great 2 weeks, and then the difficulty would skyrocket, and then they'd be back to earning subsistence wages, which is the sort of equilibrium state. A whole different question is, should equilibrium be purged from economics discussions? Maybe, because maybe it does more harm than good. But that's a topic for another day.
Yes. Okay. So sorry, I went on a bit of a brain fart area, thinking like, oh, actually, miners could be able to earn more fees from this thing. I mean, if you've got like 20 different side chains going on, and like 4 Bitcoin value can be extracted from bringing in those transactions in there. Sounds like,
yeah. No, I think it is the case now where it would be it should be on their radar probably. Because I haven't really interacted with miners. I have since the conference in Miami. I have been getting some messages, but they are the natural allies. I think part of it though is the cultural problem of the whole miners attacking Bitcoin, story from 2017. That I think there was still like a kind of PTSD or something from that.
I think everybody's got a bit of PTSD. Well, if you've been around certainly long enough.
It's a commonly held view now that miners are just like inherently evil and have to be kept on a short leash.
I've heard people refer to miners as mercenaries. This is completely false. Absolutely and completely false. These people are they're the ones who's securing the damn coin. Jesus fuck.
Well, I think they're mostly harmless. I mean, they wanted what they thought was best for Bitcoin in 2017, and they had no idea what it was. That was my read of the situation. In fact, you can go back to Scaling 2 which was in Hong Kong, and they did a miner panel, and they had like 90% of the hash rate were there, and yeah, it was very funny, and it's clear that they had like no idea what was really going on, and one person even says, "Can someone just tell us what to do?" Or they clearly had no idea what to do, and just what happened was the large blockers just sort of got to their coalition first and just convinced them that they were. Yeah, and I think that's the entire story.
Yeah. I think they've been humbled. They've definitely been humbled, and also, I forgot my point. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yeah. We're talking about why miners maybe are.
They're just providing a service of immutability.
Yeah. I think that there are a lot of narratives that are oversimplified. Like, it's true that they are mercenaries to some extent, which is that they're in a cutthroat competition, and if they're not optimally profitable, they will be fired by the blockchain, and so it's a brutal competition. I think though it's also false to say that they have like no morality or something. Like, they have always been very nice,
Yeah.
to Bitcoin, partially
Yeah.
out of a logical reason, which is that the biggest thing affecting their profits, as I said, is the Bitcoin exchange rate. They do not want the exchange rate to go down. They want it to go up a lot. If it does go down, what they really want is, this is kind of funny if you really think about this, what they would really like is for it to go down immediately, for the 2-week period, and then kind of randomly go up like in like a zigzag or something.
Kind
But
of
I
what's
don't know
happening
how
now.
much control. Exactly. This is kind of funny. Is like, has there been some kind of thing, But I doubt that is related to the current price of Bitcoin. Is, I think, one of the least governable things on
Sure.
the planet Earth.
Yeah. Well, definitely now.
Yeah.
Only a select few of billionaires are able to sort of pump and dump the price now. Okay, so we were halfway through an explanation of blind merge mining.
Yeah.
How
So
do you
I was saying,
make it blind?
own
So you get this little code.
I have a sidechain. I am running a sidechain node. So a couple insights are that everyone who's using the sidechain, some of those people are running full nodes just because they're users. So you already have someone who's doing all the work of figuring out what the next block should be, because they have a mempool, they have a network, they broadcast and receive transactions. So someone is doing the work, the calculating of not the hashing, but someone is doing like the computing of what the blocks should be.
Sure.
That's some random guy who's running a sidechain node, the same way you would run a Zcash node if you wanted to use Zcash or whatever. So, okay, so we have that. That's a tool in our tool belt, so to speak. Now, every one of those people, in order to run a sidechain node, you have to run in the design of BIP 300, because it's basically like a layer 2 type situation. In order to run a sidechain node, a layer 2 node, you have to run a Bitcoin Core layer 1 node. Software will just not do anything if you don't, and a warning message will pop up and bother you, and it will tell you that there's no connection to layer 1, so it doesn't know what's happening, and it will tell you that it will refuse to do anything until you connect it to a full node. So the software doesn't even work if there's no connection to layer 1. So everyone running of these people, of all the sidechain users, some run full nodes. All of those people also run layer 1 nodes. And you have this world where people are in between. There's some people bridging the two worlds. Now, the other thing is, in order to use the sidechain, you have to start with coins on layer 1 and send them over to layer 2. So again, of this new set of people, some of those people still have a bunch of coins on layer 1. In fact, probably most of them have most of their coins on layer 1. So is that making sense so far? So now we have a bunch of people who are like bridging the gap between the two worlds. They run both nodes. They have coins on both networks. They like the sidechain because they have coins over there. They already know what the next block is going to be on the sidechain as soon as someone finds the proof of work to meet it.
On the sidechain.
On the sidechain. So you have someone who has bridged there's someone who's done everything. And so then that's one bookend, right? We're going to come at it from both sides. Like the exact opposite of, no, I was going to make a joke there, but I'm not going to say it. It's too obscure.
No, you should.
It was going to be like a praxeology, the tower joke. So we're build the tower from the top and the bottom at the same time.
Leave my Eric Voskuil alone. I like him a lot.
I know. I actually like him too. That's kind of why it's frustrating that he has gone down this blind alley of weird theorems and things. But whatever. So the other bookend is, as we were saying much earlier, I hope you remember, about how the sidechain miners are the rightful owners, since they could destroy the sidechain at any time. They're the ones who actually should get the money. So we have someone who's basically computing the block for free. That's part of what they're already doing on the one hand. And then on the other hand, we have the sidechain miners want to get paid, but they don't want to do the work of figuring out what's going on the sidechain. So now you see the two bookends have actually become very close to each other.
Well, they can only be paid if they do the work.
Well, that's the thing, is you just use specialization of labor, and you just say, so this guy does the work. He says, okay, here is exactly what the hash. I don't know like how detailed. I don't know how this is going to get. Like I don't know if anyone will understand if I technically explain what's happening.
Do it.
And we do want to rewrite the BIP also, so it's clearer. Maybe people should just wait for that. But basically, we folded everything into the hash Merkle root of the sidechain. So does that make sense for people? The sidechain's Coinbase has a bunch of other relevant information about the main chain at that time and this other stuff. So it all comes down to the hash Merkle root on the sidechain.
So, okay.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, okay. So
that's going to define the next block.
Tree, right? There's the Merkle tree.
Yes, it has all the sidechain messages as normal.
Yeah, and then what is the Merkle
Coinbase
root? It's a particular...
Merkle root is, yes, the hash at the top that lets you define the entire base of the tree with just 32 bytes, 64 alphanumeric characters.
Right. And of course, the Genesis block would be?
Well, the Genesis block is its own block. It has its own... Well, it has no real... I don't know. I think the Merkle root has only one transaction. So
yeah.
But I don't know if that's relevant to anything.
No, okay.
Okay, so the point is, it's all defined. The person knows what all the previous sidechain blocks have been, the sidechain user. They know sidechain block 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. 13 is going to be defined completely by this hash Merkle root. And they have the mempool. They know what it should be. They are going to use the Coinbase to pay themselves on the sidechain. So let's say the sidechain block is worth 4 Bitcoin.
Right.
They're going to pay themselves the 4 Bitcoin in the Coinbase and compute the Merkle root.
Okay.
So now they have, we'll say their sidechain users X, Y, and Z. So
wait. Sorry. Now the problem we're solving is how. The problem we're solving is how to get the people that are doing work on the sidechain to get paid, because they've done the work, and somehow money needs to be derived from layer 1 or from
Well, people are going to do different work. So the miners, the layer 1 Bitcoin miners, they're going to be providing the hash rate.
Yeah.
So we need to make sure they get their cut. The people who are running the sidechain node are doing computation. We need to make sure that they get their cut, and we have to make sure everyone gets paid and everything works. So, but as I was trying to say at the beginning, the miner's cut should be basically everything. As you'll see, it'll be almost the entire
the layer 1 miner.
Layer 1 miners, and it will be, if it's not, it'll be because the sidechain node is difficult to run, and then the delta will be, you could philosophize it as the reimbursement for paying the cost of running the sidechain node.
Okay.
Which is
so in other words,
see how it works.
So in other words, layer 1 miners will become sidechain miners too.
They're going to get 3.99 of this or whatever in my example, and 0.01 is going to go to the people,
the
sidechain users.
Okay. All right. Let's continue with this example. Okay. This technical.
The block is worth 4. Objectively, that's the total value of all the transactions in the mempool. The sidechain block number 13 is worth 4 BTC.
Arbitrary number 13. Okay.
Yeah, but 13 is the block number. 4, 13 and 4. Those are arbitrary, yeah.
Okay.
Both of those numbers are arbitrary. But it's much easier for humans. Let's have an example. So now you have Mr. X who's paying 4 Bitcoin to an address controlled by X. Mr. Y is doing that for Y, and Mr. Z is doing that for Z. So they have different Merkle roots. Yes. Everything else is the same except for the Coinbase transaction and the Merkle root. Right? That makes sense?
Yep.
Now they're all going to go, and Mr. X is going to go to the miners, main chain layer 1, and they're going to broadcast a message that says, include this message in Bitcoin layer 1, and I will pay to whoever, which the miners are going to claim it for themselves. I will pay to whomever 3.5 BTC. But you can only include this message in layer 1 if part of the Coinbase transaction has this particular code, which includes the hash Merkle root for X.
Oh, because you, as a sidechain person, you already know that hash.
Right. Exactly. Now, and then Y says, well, screw that. I'm going to pay you 3 points. I'll pay 3.6 to anyone who puts it, but you have to use a different hash
You have a
route for
market,
Y.
you have an auction
And
going,
you have
right?
3.7, 3.8, 3.9, 3.91, 3.95. And then it goes up to 3.99 and it stops. And
Why?
the transactions are structured. Well, it can go up to anything. It could go up to 4.
Okay.
It could go up to 4 and stop. And then what happens is the sidechain is programmed so that the part of the sidechain code that checks to whether or not the proof of work criterion has been met, that is just looking at layer 1 Coinbase for the code.
Oh, and that's how you're able to determine that layer 1 is actually doing its stuff.
Right. And so then that's how you know whose block is it X's, Y's, or Z's? It's whichever code is put in the Coinbase. And so if X wins with 3.99, it's X's hash Merkle root that's in the Coinbase. Everyone's sidechain software will see that that's the hash Merkle root of the next block. It'll be awarded to X. X will get paid for Bitcoin on the sidechain. And his transaction on layer 1, that's separately not in the Coinbase, just in a regular spot in layer 1. That transaction will go through paying on X, because remember, X has coins on both layer 2 and layer 1. So he will get 4. There's a kind of a pump. And this is funny when we test it, because funny things will happen like this. You'll run out. But he'll get he has 2 bags,
what do you mean
basically.
by a pump?
I will explain it in a second.
It's a drain.
It's funny. I said I'll explain it in a second. You said I'll see. So he has 2 accounts. He has let's say he has 100 sidechain coins and 100 main chain coins. He will lose. He immediately gains 4 sidechain coins, goes up to 104, but he loses 3.99 on layer 1.
Yes.
So it goes down to 96 point whatever 99. So that's what I mean is when you blind merge mine, you're constantly running out of the more important layer 1 coins, and you get the layer 2 sidechain coins.
It's deliberately done that way to obscure it.
It's deliberately done that way just to make it so that the miners do not. So the whole point of blind merge mining is to have 2 advantages. One is the miners are paid without having to run the layer 2 node. So with Namecoin, I'll share a funny story about this in a second. With Namecoin, they have to run the Namecoin node, as we explained in some detail. But the other thing is with Namecoin, they would get paid in NMC, Namecoin, a different altcoin. They don't get paid in Bitcoin. But with blind merge mining, they get paid on layer 1, and they don't have to ask any questions. They just take the highest bid. So there's some other logic related to that I could explain. But the thing I wanted to explain is that in the era of Namecoin, the Namecoin block was literally worth like 1,000th of the Bitcoin block, right? So we're talking like $5 versus like $6,000-$7,000, or $3,000, $4,000, $5,000 for the Bitcoin block back in the day. So what happened is the Namecoin software, since it was it was like more experimental, it would crash, and all the Bitcoin nodes would be unaffected. But the mining pools and things, a mining pool, their Namecoin thing would crash, and it would like bring everything down for like whatever, like 20 seconds or something, which has a significant effect on the profitability. Again, since the costs are fixed every 2 weeks and they have to be finding blocks the whole time. But one thing that could happen, I don't know if all these things happened at once, but sometimes if the mining software crashes, there's so much voltage flowing through the wires that now it doesn't know what to do, that it builds up and it cannot be appropriately, like they have like, batteries, capacitors and things. But if there's voltage flowing in and the thing is built to take an enormous amount of voltage and there's now nothing for the chips to do, I think they must have fixed this by now. Like they just have they must have the chips just mine on nothing, like just compute hash of like numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 or something.
Oh, right. Okay.
But it was the case in the past where the software crashed, the mining hardware would literally burst into flames and explode because there would be so much electricity just like pumped into it. And so that's for getting like $5 per block extra on top of a $6,000 Bitcoin block. So you see, there's a lot of funny magnitudes here. There's like, okay, we have this giant amount. We can merge my Namecoin. We'll get like a tiny, tiny, tiny bit more.
But the cost is
potentially blowing everything up. Yeah. that was kind of just a weird state of affairs.
Was that your funny story, by the way?
That's as funny as it gets. Yeah, with
Yeah.
Bitcoin, with blind merge mining stories.
Okay.
So there you go. So that I don't know if that made any sense at all, but that's
Okay.
the answer to
So
your
yeah,
question.
with the draining effect, and then the coins are moved over incrementally.
Yeah, the draining effect is just a side effect of the fact that
Right.
only
Yeah.
one person is in both worlds. So the one person is more privileged. The sidechain user has more information. But the sidechain coin is the worst coin to get because the layer 1 coin is the better coin. That's the settlement coin,
But that's
That-
how everything will work. Only this way. Like it can only work that
Well,
way. Because from an
the
economic
sidechain,
point of view.
yeah, well, the sidechain coin is it has new features, so it's better in that sense.
Sure.
So if you liked the features, you would want to hold the coin to make use of the features. Same way you go to an arcade and you swap the money for tokens. You'd want to hold the tokens so you can use the arcade. I don't know. Would you think arcades will still exist in the future with tokens? I don't know. But the point is, hopefully you in the audience understand what we mean. You want to use the features. You want to play the arcade game, so you have a bunch of these tokens. The layer 2 coins have to be slowly redeemed, and they have some risk and some inconvenience. So that's that's their disadvantage. Now the reason the layer 2 coins must be worth objectively less. I mean, they have advantages and disadvantages, but the reasons why they must be objectively worth less is that if they are ever worth more, anyone can go from layer 1 to layer 2 at any time at the 1-to-1 pegged rate. So the ceiling there's a hard ceiling on the price in that direction. You see what I mean? If people are saying these sidechain coins are worth 5 Bitcoins, then someone could just be like, what? I have a Bitcoin in my wallet. You move it over and then sell it for 5 Bitcoin. And then just keep doing that, forever. It can't possibly be the case. That's like an infinite loop. So that cannot happen. So the layer 2 coin is must have a lower price in the free market.
But how are you supposed to stop that? And do you see?
No, you're not. It's fine. It's just it's not really a problem. I was just saying that this is a situation where this is why you might be paying 3.99 to get only 4. Oh, excuse me. Why you might pay 4 to get only 3.99.
Oh.
So that's actually, I was just saying it's all consistent.
I see.
Yeah.
I see. And then that would be like a best case scenario. You get like 3.99 or something like that. Maybe.
Yeah, obviously they would prefer, the X, Y, and Z would prefer that that somehow that they would somehow get like 3.2 or something, they get a bigger cut.
Yeah.
But it's tough because any single person on the sidechain can start to blind merge mine, and anyone on layer 1 can join the sidechain at any time and then mine there. So the barrier to entry is extremely low. So it's very likely that there'll be at least 2 or 3 people genuinely competing with each other.
Oh, I see.
And so then it's
Competing
because you
for
see what
that.
I mean? If you earn 3.99, then you're earning 0.1 for yourself. But it's in exchange for doing stuff that you're already doing. You already run the sidechain node. It already has a mempool. So it's free money. So if you have to say, oh, instead of 0.01, I have to settle for 0.08, well, you're like, okay, that's better
Doesn't
than 0.
matter, yeah, because
Right.
it's a
The
bond seller.
transactions are designed so that only when you bid on layer 1, it's only valid in that block. It's only valid with that sidechain block. It's only valid with that main chain block. It's only valid for one block. And if they take someone else's bid, they can't take your bid. So it's designed to be that the transaction will just die if they don't take if yours isn't the one that's taken. So there's no risk. Although there's a horribly complicated mempool management on layer 1 as a result of dealing with that.
Now you've got a on drivechain.info/peer review new.
Yeah, I had an old one that was much snarkier, but I changed it to a better one.
Dude, I wonder how much damage that lovely sarcasm you've got has done to this.
Well, I'd rather have it be, accepted for its merits instead of, it's like if you could suck up to people. Again, I need it to actually work because I want to use it for the prediction markets project. So I actually need it to be battle tested. So I don't need it to just get by, even though it's just because it's sucked the right person's dick or whatever,
Yeah. Well, this to me it sounds quite nice because I'm able to solve the fungibility problem in this case.
Yeah, I thought that was a no-brainer. The Zcash.
Yeah.
So what I like, I always like the first altcoin we copy has to be Zcash because it'll have the most cypherpunk cred, and then all the people who disagree with us will just be revealed as people who are anti-privacy. Because, would you prefer that people have nothing else to use, like they have like Whirlpool, I guess, but it's not as good as Zcash sidechain, which offers it's superior, absolutely superior mixing, where you're mixed with every single person who is using the coin at the same time as you. So the more popular it gets, the better the privacy gets, and also the possibility of the Z to Z transactions, which have the unassailable privacy. Those two things are just in a different category than.
Sounds like why not just drop all the T addresses and just go with the Z addresses?
Well, I think it's actually a little. We did something similar. So I wanted to react to the paper that one person wrote about how people misuse Zcash, and they ruin the privacy because they don't understand what they're doing. So
you mean because it's not a default Z is the ZK snarks world and T is the transparent world. So you're saying because they have defaulted to doing the transparent world, as a result,
they've been criticized on this basis, and someone wrote an academic paper about the transactions privacy sucks actually. So I wanted to react to that in an intelligent way, but I didn't want to just. I don't think it's so here's the thing. It's always optional. You know what I mean? The privacy. It's always an optional layer. This idea of making it the default, I just don't believe in it because think about it. Then you just rename in your mind, just put different labels on everything. And you'll see that it's the exact same result, and then you'll realize that you didn't do anything. So the different labels I'm talking about are relabel. Say Zcash now has only Z addresses, but rename it from Zcash to Z addresses, and then say Bitcoin, rename Bitcoin Core to T addresses. And then you see, well, it's the same thing, The T addresses have benefits because they're easier to code, easier for the humans to understand. So I wanted to react to the core, the meat of that critique, but I didn't want to just get rid of the T addresses because I thought that I should make the software way more complicated. It would be easier. One of the reasons it was easy to copy was that the software is so similar to Bitcoin Core. So it was easy since the template is based on the sidechain template for BIP300 is based on Bitcoin Core. It was easy to copy. So I thought all that was fine, but I was like, yes, we can improve the UX to make the privacy better. So we invented this different thing called Meltcast, which I think is better. And Meltcast forces people to melt their transactions individually, and you can only do one T address at a time. By definition, even if you click do all of them on the blockchain, it will they will show up as individual transactions. They won't be linked on the blockchain. And we just haven't done it yet, but we have plans for we have a lot of stuff in there that allows you to broadcast the transactions at random times to make it less obvious that they're all from you. But we do have that in that thing, but we didn't put it for this part, partially for testing and these other things. But so we made them unlinkable like that. And then when people take coins out of the Z pool, we have technology for stopping the user from screwing the privacy up. So what we tried to do instead is we have a section for the Z to Z transactions, and we have this thing Meltcast, And the goal is really to attract everyone into those two user-friendly options. And if people don't want to use those two options, then it's kind of like a losing battle to try and make other stuff more private. It's not really going to happen. At the end of the day, people have Venmo and they have all this other stuff, that they'll use when they want it to be easy. So what we really just need is there to be a way for the people in the world who really need privacy for hopefully different reasons, right? Like a political dissident in Hong Kong and one in Zimbabwe and one in Italy or something, we want to get it so that, and whatever, drug dealers in the United States or something, whatever, criminals. We want it to be
Your
like
politicians.
Yes, absolutely. Right. Oh yeah. Our best senators. Oh, that reminds me of a couple stories, but you want them to all be able to mix with each other, and they can all go into like a zone where the coins go in, and then when they come out, you don't know who's or who's, and so you have to give up. And if that is sort of the standard. This idea that we could make some technical changes and then everything in the protocol would be private, I think is not going to work. But I know that that's a popular point of view, but I don't subscribe to it at all.
Yeah. No, I had a discussion with Riccardo Spagni.
Of course, he's big into that. And from Monero community is big into that. They say the whole thing has to be private. But the thing is, the use of Monero is not mandatory. It's not like at gunpoint, everyone has to use Monero. So it's always an optional layer 2 at the end of the day, no matter what you do. That's my point of view.
Yeah. Fair argument. All right. Now in this less snarky thing, you've got something called delousing the main chain, the side chain privatization. Do you want to go into that a bit?
Yeah, I did an enormous presentation on that. When was that? It was like 4 hours long in September. That was June 2016, I think. This is an idea that many of the sidechains are actually bad and shouldn't exist, and we need to make sure we have a way of destroying them and keeping them away from
delousing
the user. Exactly. So
what
the fact that the
shave your
miners,
head.
Yeah. Well, the fact that the miners can steal from a sidechain can be reused as an ingredient that says the miners can take out like a sniper rifle and assassinate a bad sidechain, thus deterring the bad sidechains from ever arriving. So some of these sidechains would just be like stuff that like wrecks other sidechains. Like you don't want to have 2 Namecoins. That would be stupid, right? Because you just want to have one set of names. Then it's just confusing. You can't have like google.com on one system and then say have another system with a different google.com. That's like annoying. So, but then there's also like the Oracle parasite concept that I sort of introduced before about Oracle stealing each other's reputation. That is also bad, very bad for the Oracle world. You could also just say like there could be a smart contract that is something like it will pay you to like reorg other blockchains or something, and there's like now they're all harassing each other, So you don't want that. And so the idea is that some side, and there's other like weird ones about like people have published weird theoretical ones about just getting people tangled in a weird knot and they can't untangle. So instead, I just say
strange
side
loop
chain,
or something. Yeah.
I say stuff like that. So weird loops and just like weirdly escalating like funds at stake and like what's the second pay auction or weird other stuff like that. So when instead I just say the sidechains just declare themselves in advance. They say I want to be a sidechain, and the miners they manage a portfolio of sidechains basically, and they want to now make sure that the portfolio contains all the best sidechains that make the exchange rate as high as possible, that make the transaction fees as high as possible. And so
So then,
So
where does
you
the
don't want
policing come
sometimes
down
to.
to it?
Well,
Then-
but if a bad sidechain goes in, the miners can steal from it and then destroy it. So that the part of the delousing the main chain is in the first section about the whole miners can steal business, which is totally misunderstood. That particular point, I obviously make a number of points arguing that is misconceived, but this one, that point in particular, is one that says that actually the fact that they can take out a gun and blast the sidechain to pieces has numerous important beneficial angles. So that's what I'm just trying to say. It's like it's just one more thing. The critics really think that this is some kind of flaw that you could edit the code or something, and
So
you could
how does a
you could
miner?
fix the problem.
Yeah, how does a miner
Of miners
destroy?
stealing.
How does a miner
You
destroy?
know, I'm just
that?
saying it's possible to miswithdraw from there are a couple ways, but so this is funny. This is an interesting. There are a lot of different complex arguments to this, but one way is they could stop coins from ever going in to what really people have in mind is that the box is unlocked by upvoting that withdrawal hash, as I mentioned. So they can manually construct a version that pays all the sidechain coins to themselves, the miners, and then they can upvote that one until it reaches 13,150, and then they are the new owners of the coins on layer 1, and they have stolen from the sidechain. That is the big controversy. A lot of people think, "Why, are you crazy? They're just going to take everyone's coins." And I don't see it that way. And as I said, they can already take people's coins. Well, they would want to take advantage of the fact that the sidechain produces benefits for the coin, the future transaction fees and the higher exchange rate, and the ability of the coin to now take on any feature would be something that boosts its value. And if it lost that feature, the exchange rate would go down. That's on the carrot side, but on the stick side is that it's very difficult for them to even get away with stealing the coins because they have to misdeclare it at the beginning that 3 months from now they will take the wrong coins out, and then when they do that, it is a situation where they could do that for every sidechain. So it basically brings an end to the sidechains feature on BTC, which I just conjecture is valuable or will be valuable in the future. And then when the thing is wrong, anyone could. You have a situation where people are watching for 3 months as it gets closer and closer to the finish line. And so you have plenty of opportunity for people to do something about it. One of the many things that they could do is they could just set a little flag on layer 1, the main chain, and say, do not actually allow this transaction to be included in a block. So even though it gets to 13,150, or do not allow it to reach 13,150 or whatever.
Now we're down to the Byzantine general.
When it ultimately reaches 13,149, then you're basically UASFing the miners. You're basically saying that you won't accept their block if they steal from this sidechain. That's just something they could do. But it's an intriguing possibility because it doesn't really cost you anything at all. Because if you fight and lose, then all that happens is you realize that more blocks are being found that included the history of it reaching 13,150 and this coin's being stolen. So like the next day or whatever, you just say, okay, I give up, and you unset the flag, and then your software goes back. By definition, you won't be seeing blocks on your side if you UASF and block it. But then if all the miners go with it, with the theft, so that's just one thing that's a big deterrent and costs you basically nothing, but which could deter the miners from even trying to steal in the first place. There's plenty of other things that you might do in response, but I don't. Sometimes if you bring them up, people feel like the entire security model rests on those things, which it doesn't. So I'm kind of like hesitate to explain them all, but the framing of the question is wrong. Whether or not the sidechain succeeds or not should be up to the designers of that sidechain. And this is the meme that I have on drivechain.info, the skimming the vital few meme, where it's like, it's possible that like 99% of sidechain designs will be bad and it will be stolen from and no one will care. But the point is to give the opportunity to those few that could be well designed. And then the miners themselves would just, from a human perspective, they would consider those features to be a part of Bitcoin. So like a large block sidechain or something, or the prediction market sidechain or Namecoin, they could say, we want to promote this feature. We think it will give us revenues. We think it will give up the coin more value. Will help Bitcoin succeed. We're all going to be super rich if Bitcoin does well. So yeah.
Okay. So in other words, let's imagine a world where we have a group of miners, we have a group of people who are creating side chains, and the people who are creating the side chains, they all go up to these miners and say, okay, we'll do this. Immediately, the miners have an expectation in this world that they will rape and pillage any of the side chains. It's default. It's going to be expected that they're going to rape and pillage any of the side chains. And then maybe one or two, they think, actually, this one has got benefits. Let's keep that going because it has fungibility. You know, it introduces the concept of fungibility into Bitcoin. Or maybe it's like a lifting up into like a lightning type scenario, except where you don't have the multi-sigs or something like that.
Yes, I mean, it could be simple as the miners themselves could say that they could be users of the Zcash sidechain. They could be like, oh, I really like that feature. I'm so glad that it's around, you know. And then it deters anyone. No one is going to write you see, in the drive chain world, no one is going to write the weirdo sidechain that attacks everything because it'll just be shut down by the miners at the beginning or whenever it gets going or whatever. It could just be, so they'll never even bother. It'll be deterrent to the evil developers. And other developers may be optimistic and they might try something and then it may suck and no one will care if it gets stolen or not, and then it does get stolen from. But there are many people out there with genuinely good ideas, you know. David Vork's Coin is a good idea.
Yeah.
We should try it. Zcoin, Zcash is a good idea. We should have it without the dev tax.
Yeah. Yeah. So actually, yeah, I do get the feeling that maybe like miners. Now I've met a few, and you know, when they went on the stage in Hong Kong on that layer 2, whatever the thing was. Yeah, I got the impression that sure, they know their domain of mining and electricity and all of that stuff, but when it comes down to like what might be beneficial or what might not be beneficial for certain features, for example, like SegWit, a lot of them weren't on board for that. So who's to say like that these miners would see these ideas and then just immediately pile into it and just trash them with the expectation that rape and pillage is going to be the first option. And then as a result, your users hear this and see this, and maybe some of them get burned, had a couple of Bitcoin stolen from them. And then as a result, the word isn't the word that goes around is that, yeah, watch out, this shit is gonna burn you. Like me as a user think that this is a great idea. But the miners thought it was a shit idea, and they fucking raped the chain.
Well, they have an incentive to get it right. I mean, we're not going to live in a nirvana world that has no error, right?
Sure.
So that's never happening. But we right now live in we could go into a lot of details about problems with the current situation that are much worse than what you just described. But the key is that the miners have an incentive to get it right. If they add the right side chains, and again, this costs them basically nothing. If they add the right portfolio of side chains, they can maximize the exchange rate and the transaction fees that they collect.
Okay.
And if they don't, then they get paid less. So they at least have some incentive. Again, that modulo that whole 2-week thing. But there's no other group that is punished other than the investors when we don't know anything about them. They're too sovereign to be bothered with questions or polls and things. But there's no other group that is punished if the sidechain portfolio is wrong.
Okay.
So they are the best to give it to.
Yeah. Okay. So these miners, they're incentivized to actually make it work because they're going to earn more fees. And as the payments, as the block rewards start to reduce in time, this increases the relevance of this.
Fees, yes.
Yeah, fees. Yeah. Now, if I were to design a sidechain and then get users to put it on, and then miners start breaking it, like that's a little bit of a.
Well, partly for that reason, we have them activate first, so which requires a much higher threshold. It's like it was basically just based off of BIP 9, because all this was designed back in like 2015, when BIP 9 was like not a controversial thing or anything. But it's like that one. I don't remember the exact parameters, but it's something like you need 95% of hash rate for 2 weeks to just flip a bit or signal that they would like this sidechain to go from being off to being on. And so then
so this is what,
and that's also where you put in like the labels that are like the Zcash sidechain. Then you have hash rates like where people can find the software and how they know that they're running the same node as everyone else. So that's called claiming the sidechain slot. So do that first, and that's why I think it could be an elaborate trap, like luring people in, but it's kind of stupid. That's really where they would just say we're not interested in this, and that's where the error would be that they would unfairly dismiss a good sidechain. But I don't really think they would. It's better for them to try a sidechain out and then close it down.
I see. So actually,
especially because the sidechains don't affect anyone except their own users.
This is, as you said, this is really not that far from reality. I mean, you name a bunch of VCs. This happens all the time with startups and whatnot. You got your venture capitalists, you got your people with the money saying, okay, look, I'll give you a year, prove yourself. And then they do put more money in you. If not, fucking shut down. You're done.
And that's healthy. It's trial and error is healthy.
It introduces actually, it's really not that bad. In fact, because it actually stimulates an evolutionary system in layer 2.
All right. This is exactly why this is the delousing the main chain is another part of it that I mentioned earlier in that response about that. It's the analogous question is kind of like, does the free market allow entrepreneurs to go bankrupt? And it's like, yes, but that's the threat of bankruptcy is what keeps the businesses honest and focused on improvement. So that is the whole angle.
On top of this, it also introduces an element of I don't know. It's just a thought out there. I don't think it doesn't hold any weight. But it also introduces a concept of a canary in the gold mine, whereby you can start to see
the coal mine.
Unless
you're using a more canary in the coal mine, right? It's the canary that dies.
Yeah.
Because of the fumes.
Yeah.
Is there a different metaphor? Canary in the gold mine that means something else?
Dude, it's just money. It's just
there could be a different.
Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, but you understand the problem is the coal mining has all these horrible fumes.
Dude, I think any mining has all sorts of horrible fumes.
I guess so. Yeah. Okay. They both start with C, though. It's alliteration. Canary in the coal mine.
Yeah.
Anyway, okay.
So you might hit
you're
like
talking about the fees. Yeah, so this gives us a world. You're talking about the fact that the sidechain has no Coinbase transaction.
No, I'm referring to like a canary in the gold mine, in the sense that, like, if let's say a group of miners, they all say, okay, like we're seeing good value that's derived from X, Y, and Z sidechains. Let's keep this going. And then one of them starts to attack another one. It becomes very painfully transparent that this particular miner is doing this attacking. So you can see that.
Well, it doesn't have to be. They could have tried to attack it secretly. I mean, but it's designed so that you really need like 75% hash rate if you really want to steal, and 25% don't. They'll be downvoting you and you'll be upvoting, and so instead nothing. It's biased towards nothing will happen.
But that's also important.
The bias.
That's also important to mention.
The status quo is much better. Because the people, there will be arbitrageurs who will swap the coins for a fee instantly, instead of waiting for the long 3-month withdrawal.
Yeah.
Yes. And then if those arbitrageurs are the miners themselves, they know that they can guarantee that they can make them worth 1. And so they would be the best people to swap with, which they would probably come out in the market as them having the most competitive rates. So it's possible that but it's also just possible anyone who knows the miner or whatever, it could be any kind of related thing.
But no, I think yeah, you've really okay. A lot of this information is like the back of your hand for you, right?
Right, exactly.
You skipped a lot of these things. Like, I think, give it a chance. For example, me to absorb these things. Like you mentioned that you have to get like 75%. You've got other miners that are also downvoting.
Yeah, you can upvote and downvote. So if there's contention, if there's no contention, then you only need 51%. But if 25% know that it's an attack, they can single-handedly just block all the withdrawals from the sidechain, and then money can only go into the sidechain. Becomes like a Rubin Thompson space chain until or whatever, until you can the money's lost forever until the miners can agree. And then while that's happening, people can still swap. You can always swap. I can say, let's say I'm A and you're B.
This is the arbitrage stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, so I could say I'll pay 5 sidechain coins to you in exchange for 4 main chain coins, and that's very easy to do since both of us will have addresses on both networks. So we just do a basic HTLC, the same hash. We can cryptographically swap, or more likely the exchanges, Coinbase, Kraken, whatever, they would just add because they would have the best liquidity. So they would just add all these coins, the sidechain coins, and they would trade, and their price wouldn't fluctuate based like the way the crypto prices fluctuate, which is like this enormous things, but they would fluctuate a lot, whether it would be 99 cents on the dollar, 98 cents, or 99.9 cents on the dollar. That would be based on conditions on the sidechain, and so they would still fluctuate, and there would still be a high volume, because a lot of people would end up with coins on layer 2 that they don't want. They prefer coins on layer 1. Anyone who has layer 1 coins and prefers to have layer 2 coins, they can get that instantly at the 1-to-1 rate. So I hope that's clear. That's obvious because that's part of BIP 300. You just send them to the script and they show up over there. Now, when you want to get the coins back, it's slow and annoying. So those would have to trade at a discount. But there would be plenty of people who would say, hey, I'm not doing anything. I've got a bunch of time and I got nothing to do. And I got layer 1 coins. I'll take my stack of 99 Bitcoin. And I'll buy 100 sidechain coins. And then I'll just wait 3 months and walk them back across. And I'll be part of this class of person, this arbitrageur person who walks them back across. See, there's only one transaction from layer 2 to layer 1. But that transaction can hold like 30,000 outputs or whatever. And the sidechain will sort them based on their main chain fee. So it will sort them based on so the whole thing coming back across as an enormous layer 1 fee. So to make sure that it gets through on layer 1 at the end of the 3 months.
Dude, okay.
So you can always join that coalition and join the arbitrageur coalition. And then you say, well, I turned 99 coins into 100 coins, and it just took 3 weeks, and all I had to do was wait. And the miners have the least risk of all because they know that they have enough hash rate to guarantee that they can redeem the layer 2 coins to layer 1. So they they should be able to offer the most competitive rates. There's all these other interesting things that fall out of it as well. Though, like the Zcash technology is hard to understand. It might permit inflation, so those coins might trade at a different rate, and then only someone who has researched the code and is running their own Z-side node and knows that they can detect and prevent inflation, that person would be able to offer 99 cents on the dollar, whereas other people would not. And so then it's just another case where the specialization of labor just fixes everything. The prices float like that, and it all just cancels itself out.
Yeah, and then, oh man, no, what excites me most about this is that Darwinian effect that's happening on there too.
Exactly right.
Yeah,
and in the arbitrageur market also, because now you have people who are pushing the envelope and they're saying, you know what, can we offer 99.9 cents on the dollar? Because I've got nothing, because they're just super rich people holding a lot of Bitcoin. And they've researched they've shopped the risk. They know every ounce of the code on the sidechain and BIP300, and they know the miners personally, and they, in fact, are holding a gun to the mining pool operator's wife's head at this time, and so they know that the risk is zero, and they're just going to say, well, yeah, sure, I'll take a free yield. You do this 4 times a year, every 3 months. You could be getting whatever, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. You get any percent. You could get some percent return on your Bitcoin. And then as to the risk, it's for them to determine. But when they do that, then individual users get the best price when they want to redeem the coins instantly. So they send from layer 1 to layer 2. And they say, I don't want these layer 2 coins anymore. Well, there's a whole market now of people on Kraken, Coinbase, HTLC, private world, where they just want to say, okay, I'll just get all my coins back. Yeah, exactly. Now you're back on layer 1. You don't have to worry about BIP300 ever again.
Damn. Okay. This is sounding actually quite appealing. It's quite appealing. Cool. Who else? Okay, yeah. You said that there's missing. I know. It's getting a bit late into this. You look a little bit tired too.
Well, yeah, it's a little early for me. With the Hong Kong such a problem.
I know. Yeah.
Late this early.
You mentioned that there's some code that's incomplete.
Oh yes. Yeah, it's not completely 100%. It's almost complete, but it's really close.
What is outstanding?
Just stuff about replacing the sidechain slot. It just sounds like we never bothered to do it because it wasn't very interesting. But we're almost done with it now anyway. So it's very, very close. In general, I have a new idea for the sidechain template. You understand that most of the work is done on the sidechain template. So BIP300 is like this little docking bay that sends the coins out.
Stop. Yeah. So you've got a sidechain template, which would consist of a series of maybe C++ code. Basically, it's you just copy paste and you can fill it out. Basically, it's got the API, knows how to talk to Bitcoin Core, etc., etc., etc. Is that what you mean by that?
Yes, I have the code there's 2 different pieces of software. There's Bitcoin Core that we have now, which could be upgraded to have BIP300 the same way SegWit was added, the same way Taproot will be added, same way whatever pay to script hash was added, blah blah blah.
Yeah.
So that's Bitcoin Core layer 1.
Yeah.
And then layer 2 are all the sidechains. So I originally thought, I was like, well, I'll just design this and put it out. And then all the people who want to do a sidechain, they'll do the hard work. After all, they're the ones who want it so badly. But instead, the idea was just like confusing people to understand. Right, exactly. And so I was like, well, I'll just do it myself, and I'll just design the best sidechain template that's just blank. That's just Bitcoin Core, just with all the sidechain stuff, all the main chain proof of work torn out, with blind merge mining put in instead, and with everything else. And so then we did that, and then we forked it twice from there. Well, 3 times really. wants to add the Zcash stuff, wants to add a larger block size, increase the block size limit, and then once, because of a joke that started in the group that spiraled out of control and became its own sidechain called Train Chain, which is just pictures of trains everywhere.
Forgive me,
But-
there's a group?
Oh yeah, there's a Telegram group, t.me/DC Insiders.
T.me/
That's a joke. Yeah, so only
DC.
Americans will get that joke, I think. And the joke is drivechain insiders in one set, but DC Insider is also a phrase to refer to the people who hang around Washington, D.C. all the time and have political clout as a result of their weirdo connections to politicians and think tanks and things. So
okay. So I'll join that.
yeah, so join it and then run Train Chain, which is a joke sidechain. It's like a Dogecoin of side, I suppose. I mean, it's not for me to say, but it is funny. So that's the most of the actual engineering actually this is just stuff where I was like, over time it will evolve towards this equilibrium or whatever, and so this is just how it'll end up. So I know it'll all work, but then I was like, okay, no one understands what's going on at all, so I'll just do it all myself, and then they'll be able to see for themselves this is how it works. And so the BIP 300 part is not supposed to be a lot of code.
Mm-hmm.
So the stuff on layer 1 is a simpler thing about sending coins out in a certain script, and then when the script comes back, checking to see that the voting. It's still complicated, but you understand that's all it's doing is sending coins to sidechain 3, and then for sidechain 3, it watches for these different withdrawal bundle hashes, and then it counts the votes up. And then if the votes are high enough.
Just wait, sorry. You said the sidechain 3? You've got the transparent.
Slots.
Okay.
There's like 1, 2, 3, 4. There's 256 slots.
Oh.
There's another source of confusion, though. I mean, you can just add another 256 by just soft forking in BIP 300 again, like BIP 300B or BIP 300C. You do it forever. And the sidechains can have their own. You could just activate BIP 300 on a sidechain, and then it would have 256 of its own child sidechains. And then furthermore, you could be, yes. And then furthermore, we could change the 256 to 35,000 by just making it 2 bytes instead of 1, but it would just waste a byte pointlessly. But people hear about like how there's only 256. People hear about that. People who know nothing hear about that and they say, that's not enough. I really think there won't be 256 sidechains in the world that are viable, but I may be wrong about that. I don't know.
Well, wasn't it Bill Gates said you only need a certain amount of memory, right?
Yeah. So this could be like that.
Snapshot
future,
this moment.
I was going to say, this is it. And then they're going to play the clip, and then they're going to be a little like slide whistle sound effect. Oh, too bad. And then like a big X. Wrong. Yeah. But I mean, if there's numerous ways, as I said, you could do it again and add another 256 for BIP 300B.
Yeah.
Or you can have a sidechain have its own 256. So it's not, in practice, there's no limit. It's just better to minimize the number of bytes, because you have to understand when every message that refers to a sidechain has to know which sidechain you're talking about. And the shortest way is to just use 1 byte, and a byte counts to 256.
I understand that. Yeah.
Most people do not, though. Even people who are technical Bitcoin.
Dude, I'm writing a networking protocol.
Yeah. So it's just better to just do that. But so the slots, are defined in the code. They're defined by number.
Yeah.
Obviously.
Yeah.
So that's why I say sidechain number 3 all the time. Just trying to point out that that's an arbitrary number.
Okay.
But every time you refer to them, you have to somehow say that. But you also understand that when something is withdrawing from like the large block sidechain, that should not have any effect on like the prediction market sidechain or whatever. You know what I mean? So they're all their own zone. So they each compete for 13,150 votes within the slots. There's like slot number 3. Here's all the withdrawals for that.
Yeah.
slot number 4 could have only one withdrawal, and there could be no controversy over there. So those are all independent.
Yeah, talking about the code, what are the impacts does this BIP 300 and 301 have on layer 1? Because a lot of people, some people would say it's just totally absolutely unacceptable to have a single byte more.
Yeah, that's like those are people like me, right? That's what I'm saying. Like we only need 1 byte to have another. Well, you mean there's no BIP 300 does nothing to affect the current block size.
So basically, it's like a Schnorr signature, right? It's
great I don't know about that.
Well, okay. I mean, it's compacted. There's no new stuff that's sort of added size-wise to the block.
Right, the layer 1
correct?
block. It's yes.
Layer
what
1
happens is all these messages about adding, removing sidechains, the add and remove sidechains and the upvote, downvote of whether or not the withdrawals are valid. Those are all those messages are in layer 1 Coinbase transactions.
Yeah.
So your layer 1 node already scans through the Coinbase transaction of every block and it checks that it has certain rules, including many rules which are special only for the Coinbase transaction. So there's absolutely nothing fundamentally different about that. And as for the coins that are deposited into the sidechain and taken out, those are just regular transactions on layer 1. So there's nothing that BIP 300 does that is fundamentally any different from what your full node software already does.
Okay.
Yeah. So, but obviously there is there's a lot of code. There's a lot of weird code about block validation, because the blocks have to be, if something doesn't follow the BIP 300 rules, it has to be rejected as an invalid block. But whether or not the code added by BIP 300 is more or less complex than SegWit or Taproot or PayToScript hash or something else is not really for me to say. Although I definitely think that SegWit did a lot of bizarre things, including totally changed what the definition of a block is and added these weird flags to transactions that some of which had bugs that had to be fixed later. It also was a mandatory block size increase on layer 1. So that was kind of weird. But people just went with that because they were in a brainwashed political rage state. And so they just went along with that. Also because SegWit was a good idea, but it was like, most people have many people admitted later they had no idea it was a block size increase at the time. So I don't know what the point of that is. But yeah, I think, what's your question? Like, I think the whether or not it makes the code on layer 1 more complicated is, that's a matter of opinion, I suppose.
Yeah. No, I was concerned. Like, does that increase the block size?
No, it does not. It doesn't do anything on layer 1. It's the only vehicle. It's the only vehicle that I can see by which we could plausibly and credibly and sustainably decrease the block size. So if we really wanted to do it, if we were very serious about decreasing layer 1 block size, some people throw that out, I think, as maybe a joke, or maybe just to kind of get under people's skin. Like, that's a funny thing to say to large blockers and say, well, we can actually shrink the block size. And then people are like, oh my God, and then like a Victorian era woman like faints or something. She's like, I can't believe it. That you would say such a thing.
You profiteer.
Yeah. And so I don't know how serious those people are, but I think some people are serious. And I think it's worth doing, actually.
How does it result in the shrinking of the block size?
Because you now have, with BIP 300, the users have access to block space on other chains. So they can get their large block side chain somewhere else. And they can get, just if they want features like a Zcash or whatever, they happen to be somewhere else. And so the main chain can become, if people wanted to think of it this way, more like a kind of thing that just settles between the side chains.
Scaffolding, yes. This is actually how I
and that's the real layer. If you really want layers, then you really want it to be something like where the regular user isn't on layer 1 anymore, and it ossifies and it becomes really weird and antiquated, but it's what we've got, and it lets us move among these other different things. So if you're really serious about that, now think about that. If you're really serious about it only being to settle between sidechains, you know that an enormous amount of netting is going to be happening, where most of the transactions. I'm just going to explain it. The transactions are. I'm saying like the net effect of the transactions is recorded instead of the actual effect. So,
I see.
We live in a world where we have commercial banks. Bank of America, Chase, Wells Fargo in the United States, and then we have the Fed, and then we have exactly like a clearinghouse, and then we have the Fed. The origin of the Fed was because of the private clearinghouses. So the Fed is just like a public version of a clearinghouse, and then we have the Bank of International Settlements. So this big pyramid. Now, if I have a checking account at Wells Fargo, and I pay someone else at Wells Fargo, they just do a bookkeeping transaction that stays on that layer. It's only when they pay, if I want to pay someone else who's at like Chase Manhattan or something. Now, what they do is what I presume they do is they don't call up Chase Manhattan like immediately. They keep track of it all, and then at the end of the day, they like settle up. They all settle up with the help of the Fed and FedWire and all that other stuff. So they only do the net effect.
I see.
There's only one transaction per day between Chase and Wells Fargo per day that just says, okay, my guys wanted to pay you $115 million, but your guys wanted to pay me, $160 million. So I'll just pay you the difference. So then there you go. So now if you're living in a world like that, where the layer one is mostly settling, still usable by people. Layer one always has to work and be available as a fallback. So people have to be able to use it to some extent in commerce. But if its main function is as this settlement layer among the different chains, you do not need the block size to be very, very large at all. And you could easily, if someone like Luke Jr. says it's not safe to have it above 400 kilobytes, you don't lose very much by knocking it down to 350 kilobytes or whatever. So, and you certainly gain quite a bit because every single sidechain, as I said, needs to run the layer one node. So you make it easier for them.
Mm.
It's going to be very easy to leave. There's not going to be, this is a block. Currently, each block can contain whatever, like 2, 3, 4. I don't know exactly the number, but let's call it 3,000 transactions. That's every 10 minutes. Every week there's 1,000 blocks. So that is per week. What did we just say? 3,000. So it's 3 million transactions per week. If every block has 3,000 and there's 1,000 blocks per week. So now 3 million is a number that's sort of too low to like actually be relevant on a global scale, but it's much too high if all you're doing is settling among like 15 sidechains. You could plausibly only need 15 in the whole week, or 30 or whatever, or like 500. So it's kind of in like a sweet spot where it hasn't quite specialized into what it is. It's still everything is being done in Bitcoin Core, and it has not quite transitioned into its layered role, and it's not quite hasn't reached it's not quite doing, it's not the perfect fit for its sort of current environment. It's kind of still lingering in its non-layered state, kind of.
It hasn't really taken on that identity. To me, I see layer one fulfilling two purposes. One, maintaining the 21 million cap, no inflation, and then using this as a crane lifting up into layer twos. So like this latest stuff, Lightning Network is a kind of a good example of this. But I think Lightning is actually a weak solution. I think I see the benefits in it, but to me, like it seems after my discussion and reading the information, it seems like this is a lot better way to go.
Well, the original design, the Lightning was named. I can only guess, but the reason they chose the name Lightning, I think, was because of the speed of the transaction, which it has the unique property out of everything else, with maybe the exception of Ruben Thompson's blind state chains. Second shout out to Ruben in one conversation. So if he'll win a prize if we mention him again, I guess. But the Lightning transactions settle instantly, so they have that unique property. So I think that's why they named it that.
And they instantly.
They have the same. You have the settlement guarantee you get from the Lightning Network is instant. You don't. The reason why is that the contentious part, broadcasting the transaction on layer 1 is not considered. Yeah, it's funny you mention that because it's not quite. It doesn't quite settle instantly. No. Because it doesn't settle the layer 1 instantly. But
that's
the layer 2 settle. Yeah, I suppose you're right. But the transaction goes through instantly. So on sidechain world, you would need to wait for confirmations, and in fact, you would need to wait for more confirmations because the security budget on the sidechain is lower. There's less money total, partially because there's no block reward. The sidechains, the block reward is 0 every time, whereas in Bitcoin, it's what is it now? 6 point, I don't remember, 125 or something. Where did it go? 50, 25, 12.5, 6.25. So now it's 6.25 per block. And 6.25 per block. But on a sidechain, it obviously, it's not printing its own new coins there. So it's always 0, and it only has the transaction fees. So you would want to wait for more confirmations there. It would be relatively inconvenient relative to the Lightning Network. But the Lightning Network also has a lot of its own. But the point I was trying to make is that the people who invented the Lightning Network never claimed that it would be the scaling solution for Bitcoin. They thought it would be a scaling solution for Bitcoin. It had the property that the transactions could take place off chain, which, is essential. BIP300 also has that property. Unfortunately for Lightning, you do need one transaction. You need to get money on layer 1, and then you need to open a channel on layer 1 because the blockchain needs to know how to pay. If everyone goes AWOL, it needs to know how to get you your money back. And so when you join the Lightning Network, you're joining this network of channels. The channels are money that has been paid into a multi-sig address, and you can get some money out of it. So you need to, at the very least, you need a few bytes on layer 1. Like even if you did some crazy engineering project, you would need at least something like, I want to say like 200 or 300 bytes on the main chain, because you need something like 32 bytes to define where the coins go if the Lightning Network transaction has to settle. And then you, as the owner of those coins, must spend from that thing to wherever you now want to send when you want to buy, your access to the Citadel because Armageddon has taken over, and now you need to finally redeem your coins to enter paradise or whatever it is. So you need like a couple hundred bytes per person just to get them onto the network. But if you use a large block sidechain with BIP300, it's actually possible for one person to move, like a Roger Ver type person can move an enormous number of coins over with one transaction, and then he can onboard people to layer 2 directly using only transactions on layer 2. And those people might decide never to settle to layer 1. And if so, then you have all these people. Because similarly, they could swap back to Roger Ver, and then it could only be Roger Ver going back and forth, or Roger Ver and like 5 other people moving coins back and forth. And as a result, you can onboard people to this layer 2 without any layer 1 bytes. It doesn't cost new layer byte per person. And the layer 1 bytes are finite and in short supply. So that is a disadvantage of the Lightning Network as far as scaling the number of users.
Yeah.
Another problem is that the channels. So like that was like a best case scenario. The real scenario in practice is that the Lightning channels are very difficult to open. It matters a lot who you choose to get in bed with, like who you open the channel with. You often have to close the channel and refresh the channel on layer 1. And all of this currently takes transactions that on layer 1 that are much larger than just a normal transaction.
This is the multi-sigs.
Yeah, so you have these big complex transactions that have all these like if statements in them. It's possible that Taproot will improve this somewhat.
Yeah.
But not, the point is Lightning Network requires a lot of activity on layer 1 actually. And so in that sense, it is, if layer 1 is going to be very scarce, it will be problematic for the Lightning Network to even get people in, let alone once they're on, they have to maintain the channels, and then when they close the channels, they
there's an attack
use layer 1 again.
Yeah, there's an attack vector which I'm sort of designing on out, and this is where it comes into my networking protocol, which is I've made it such that the transport is transport agnostic and it's information centric, which means that you directly address data's name. In this case, it's like your private key / what you need to do, like a REST style thing. So you've got your private key / do this. It would be app, the app name, the module, the function name, and then the argument, what would be inside it. So you just have this piece of information and it gets broadcast out over different transports. And in this way, I can directly talk to your public key. And I can send my public key along with the request that I've made to your public key for a specific response, which will then immediately encrypt it and send it back to me. So you're encrypting the data. This design makes it such that you become robust against state actors who have power over ISPs, because the current implementation of Lightning includes the IP address at the end of the token of information. Now, what's stopping? Well, Bitcoin is designed to be robust against state actors. Lightning is not robust at all. All it needs is a state actor to come up to control the ISPs and say, "Fuck you all." Mandate that you reallocate the IP addresses of all your customers every day. That will crush every single channel that's being set up, because now that the Lightning nodes are unable to talk to each other. So by changing this design where you make it information centric, you can change the Lightning such that it doesn't matter. You can change the IP address as much as you want. My information will still get through. So,
well, that sounds very cool.
Yeah, this is like some of the things. Like it's only recently that I've come across this drivechain stuff, and I'm thinking, well, now I need to really understand more deeply. Like read your code, not just use your application. Read your code. But then now it comes to the point of like, how does one actually get this fucking code into mainline? Like within the Linux kernel, we have very clear a very clear way of change coming into the system. But with Bitcoin Core, I mean, we don't have the lieutenant model. We don't have this. It sounds like if you need to get decent changes into the system like this, how do you do this? How do you go about doing this, Paul? How does one do this?
Well, I mean, I think
how did Taproot get in so easily?
Well, there's obviously a community of people. Some are better friends than others, and so But I think ultimately, if the users like something, then it will be impossible for core to dismiss. And so the key thing is, I don't even want people to like. I would rather have it be a good idea, but have people like. What I'm trying to say is that I only want it to get in if the user understands if not enough users understand it actually, and sort of agree to it. So like with consent, basically. I don't think SegWit or Taproot actually had any kind of informed consent with enough users. I think most people did the thing where they thought, some person said it's good, so I'm just going to join the crowd. And we had a kind of mob rule.
But that's what will happen with BIP 300 too.
Yeah, but I would rather it not activate via that dishonest.
You have no choice.
Yeah. Well, I was just saying that I'm just trying to give you a window into what I'm thinking because you asked about what to do. So I was saying I would rather not do that, and I would rather it only activate if people do understand it. But I think that if people use it and they just look at the GUI and they talk about it with their friends, they will understand it. And I think also we live in a world where now Ethereum has much higher transaction fees than Bitcoin, so it is objectively more. It has higher sales, so to speak. It has more fee-paying users. It's obviously you're pushing at an open door with me if you say Ethereum is badly designed and full of nonsense. I've been saying that.
It is.
Dear listener of this podcast, I've been saying that since before you were born or whatever.
Ethereum
is totally nonsense, but it has more customers. And we also live in a world where there are many altcoins that have most of which are stupid, and many of which are outright scams and Ponzi schemes, but some of which are good, and it's becoming more and more difficult to ignore the genuine threat of competition. So that is another thing in BIP 300's favor. Another thing is just how unsatisfactory the Bitcoin Core process, I think, has become, where it is now so conservative, as to be approaching ridicule, where it's just so slow. It takes like 4 or 5 years to get Taproot. Still won't be activated until November or whatever it is. So that was in contrast to when SegWit code was released. It was finally finished. That was October of 2016. So now that's, it's a 5-year delta.
Well, it's $1 trillion now, right?
It has. Well, yes, of course. Bitcoin has done well. No one's denying that. But I think there is an idea that the people in the know who are familiar with the process understand exactly how much bike shedding and bureaucracy there is, versus so like the altcoins are kind of getting cooler. And I'm not. The whole point of this project was to be anti-altcoin, so I'm not an altcoiner at all. I'm much less of an altcoiner than all the Bitcoin Core developers who never worked on this or a similar idea. Most of those other people, their neglect opened the door to the existence of Ethereum, and even Bitcoin Cash and these other things would not exist but for the neglect, I think, of many Bitcoin Core developers. So I lay some of the responsibility actually on them. Surprising though that may sound to many people.
Oh no, it's absolutely true. When, at least from my perspective, like when some of these core developers like Gavin,
many people, many large blockers that were originally part of Bitcoin were incompetent and they deserved to be miserable, and many small blockers were also sort of no one handled the problem. very well, despite the fact that many of the ideas, that like sort of precursors to this idea, were out there, including all the whole sidechain stuff that was happening in 2014, the extension block idea. A lot of the ideas were there, and yet for some reason, very few people were motivated on actually solving the problem of that. The people disagree on what the block size is. There was no real attempt to create a solution to the problem, which is to say something that would behave one way if the large blockers were wrong and fix the problem, and something that would behave a different way if the small blockers were wrong and fix the problem. Instead, it was just sort of the status quo prevailed, and there was no like kind of objective knowledge was created as a result of that dispute. And so, but I think I just bring that up to say that I'm the biggest like Bitcoin maximalist out there, actually, because I actually did something about the problem, and maybe it's you know, I don't know if maybe someone has something better. I doubt it though. And I'd love to hear about it if there is. But the point I was trying to make was that the altcoins are getting cooler all the time, actually, and Bitcoin it's sort of trying to become the old reliable thing, but it's not doing great at that either. You know what I mean? Because it's not ossified, so it's still, there's a lot of debate and confusion over the activation. That would be fixed.
So I do. You know, Michael Saylor came onto the scene recently, and I think he has sort of like exploded a whole different sort of way of viewing at the world by talking about Bitcoin being like Bitcoin's total addressable market being like 300 trillion, which is interesting. I mean, it's not a new thing where we say the value.
It's not new at all. Many people have said stuff like that before, going back hundreds, going back to Hal Finney said something like that in 2009.
Yes, I know that, but
people have said it throughout the years. I've heard it a million times. I've heard the 100 trillion. I've heard the 100 trillion number many times. Total value of all the currency in the world. Or something.
But the point is that he is the individual that's actually got a large amount of money, and he's got the ear of similar sorts of top business people.
Sure, yeah.
And he's able to convince groups of people. I mean, like a lot of these companies, like pension funds and whatnot.
He sort of convinced. I'm sorry for interrupting
Musk.
You, but yeah, he convinced Musk, but he didn't do a good job, right? So actually, but you're right. When he does something like that, it helps legitimize it for these other people. Yeah. Even when we have the conference in Miami, and they invited all these people who probably don't belong at a Bitcoin conference, but they were invited anyway, like the senators and regulators and other things, you know, and I love Tony Hawk also, but like, what was the point of, you know, like, I thought it was great, but I'm just saying, but when you do stuff like that, that helps mainstream it, because you were trying to say about hedge funds and things right before I interrupted you. So what
pension, like for example, pensions won't touch anything that's
can't unless it's been
Exactly.
Yeah, and it has to be sanitized by some conference where there's a senator or something.
Yeah,
they just can't do it.
Yeah, and you know, these top CEOs, they're all like a flock of sheep or something. You know, one thing will do, and then they all go.
Well, it's safe to be in the herd, of course. No one's denying that.
You don't get fired for buying IBM, right?
Yeah, well, no one gets fired for hiring McKinsey or whatever the phrase is.
Some shit like that, yeah. But another side effect that I really like about this is that shitcoiners are going to have a real trouble, a real go of it, because like anything that you create on these BIP 300 sidechains, that starts off with 0. You've got
it's a very effective way of sorting out the scammers, of course, because many people are only interested in altcoins because they want to earn money and trick people, right? Exactly. So, what you cannot do with this, if people send their coins over, then they get the coins. It's the same Bitcoin asset the whole time. It's not a
sure.
There's no new thing to pump the coin. So and we're working on a newer version of the template that just de facto just copies the altcoin software exactly with like not even any kind of like copying pasting required of the code. So, but that's very ambitious. I think at the end of the day, there still will have to be some copying and pasting of the code. But my hope is that it's very minimal. And then even if they release like new versions of like Zcash, for example, you just need to do it that one time, and then
Well,
maybe you'd be set.
I'm becoming tempted because Rust is my latest, blue-eyed, golden-haired boy or girl.
Yeah.
and
And of
I'm
course,
thinking,
Zcash is in Rust. Yes.
yeah, yeah. Did you actually copy that Zcash? I mean, no.
I worked with someone else who was doing it. Yes.
Is that implementation that you've got? Is it in Rust?
Well, it had to be because the goal is to preserve as much,
So
make
is your
everything as
template?
similar as possible. Well, they're like half and half. Like Zcash is like there's all the C++ from Bitcoin, and then there's a bunch of.
No, I understand that it's going to be divided down the middle,
yeah.
but I'm talking about the templating side, the side chain templating stuff. Is that going to be distilled down into a Rust template? The side chain template. No. What will it be?
No, it's a specification. The whole point is that the sidechain template is a fork of Bitcoin Core, so that it is very similar to what people already know.
That's on the Bitcoin side of things. That's on the Bitcoin side of things. I'm talking about.
Well, it's both actually. Both of them are the BIP 300, which is DriveNet, that's a fork of Bitcoin Core, and the sidechain template is also a fork of Bitcoin Core. They're both a fork of Bitcoin Core, like 16.99 or something.
Okay. All right.
Until we update them, or.
Okay. Anyway, I think you've satisfied a lot of my questions, and I really appreciate this. Now is time to sort of go deeper into this. And I don't know. I just hope that more people can sort of watch this podcast maybe and learn more about it. See if we can do a similar sort of thing maybe with Taproot and get some more people to question it and get the understanding of it.
I don't have any beef with Taproot. I just think that. Or SegWit, I just think that, as people are they just go along with whatever they see on Twitter. So it's a Twitterocracy. So I mean, that's what you want, people? Like, seriously? Oh, something important is happening over there. The CCP, they're coming for you.
No, I think that was my.
Your time is up.
No, I think that was my wife coming for me.
Which is arguably worse.
Indeed, it is. But I mean, obviously, I hope that people can actually like learn and understand it. I mean, but the main thing is like I want to understand it myself now, and I think it's kind of cool. I think it's kind of neat from a nerdy point of view. So I can be totally nerd sniped from this. Let's see what happens. I'll join that DC Insiders group too.
Yeah. The group is pretty good.
Cool, man. Yeah, I appreciate that. I appreciate the time, Paul.
Yes.
And all the best. By the way, where is your accent from?
No one knows. I grew up in Connecticut, but it's not a Connecticut accent. It's like this weird mix. I have no idea where it came from. It's kind of like I don't know, like I feel like Vitalik also has like a phantom accent that just it's not a Canadian accent, it's not a Russian accent, right? It's just like this weird accent.
Yeah,
I have no idea.
Yeah. Anyway, man, I appreciate it. All the best. Let's sign off now. Okay, now I need to click stop recording.